If everyone could remember to speak very clearly into their microphones and make sure that they're pointing at their face, because it doesn't always catch it otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Planning Applications Committee. Before we start on the agenda, we've got a couple of announcements. The first one's from me, which is about the usual webcasting. I would like to inform everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeat viewing on the Council's website. You should be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy. Members of the public are only able to speak if they have registered their intention in accordance with the Council's Procedure Rule 36A, Public Speaking at Planning Applications Committee. As Chair, I have the discretion to adjourn the meeting in the event that there is disorderly conduct from councillors or indeed members of the public, in accordance with Standing Order 34 and 35. I can also terminate or suspend webcasting of the meeting in accordance with the webcasting protocol. And I hope obviously none of that will be necessary. Thank you. We've also got an announcement from Julie Williams, our planning manager, about an agenda item. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just to bring to members' attention and members of the public who may be here to listen to the application for 109B Oxford Road. We've had notification this afternoon that the applicant has withdrawn that planning application, so therefore we do not need to discuss that application anymore. The application has been withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you. Which takes us on to the minutes. Is everybody happy that the minutes are a correct record of our last meeting? Thank you. And declarations of interest. I believe we have a couple. Councillor Emberson.
I'm predetermined on agenda item 16, so we'll withdraw to the public gallery, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. I am predetermined on 109A, item number 11, and I will be adjourning to the public gallery, but asking to speak. Thank you.
Any other declarations of interest? No. Thank you. In which case we go on to questions. There are none. And then potential site visits. Julie Williams, to say a word about that.
Thank you. There's just one site listed on your agenda papers where officers aren't recommending that you do a site visit to that one. It's an existing site. The application is seeking renewal of their temporary permission. Thank you.
Okay. We'll agreed on that. Thank you very much. And then we go on to planning appeals. Again, Julie Williams to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. There's no comments to make on the appeals lodged and the appeals decided. We do have the report for you regarding the decision on 55 Baston Road for your information. At the conclusion, it's noted that we are seeking legal advice regarding the decision and whether there is any merit in challenging that decision. I can advise that we are still considering that option, scrutinising the decision and the implications of doing so or not doing so. So with apologies, I can't confirm at this stage what our decision will be, but we do have 6 weeks from the date of the decision being issued. So we want to make sure that we get that decision right as to whether to challenge or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page, do you want to have a word about that before we ask about the other one you want to talk about? Yeah.
Chair, can I place on record, I think, all our collective disappointment with the inspector's decision. This is an important and sensitive site. We spent some time discussing the application at committee, and the reasons for refusal are obviously set out and public. And in view of what Julie Williams has said about the council still reflecting on its position, it would probably be sensible not to say too much tonight. And I think it would be remiss of me not to make the point that the inspector's decision was not all in favour of the appellant. There were elements of the decision that supported the council's position, and a particularly important one referenced in paragraph 168 on page 33 of the appeal about the way in which this application prevents a more comprehensive development of the wider site, and indeed the inspector effectively upheld our concerns about that, and as a planning authority, recognising that this is a very important sensitive riverside site, it's depressing, I think, that the inspector gave so little importance to that element, and obviously there are other elements that he felt were more overriding in importance. But I would just underline the fact, Chair, that the Council is still considering its position, as Julie Williams rightly pointed out. We are very disappointed with this decision, and we will say more in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on that one? No. And then there's an update on the Emma Green Golf Club that we considered at the last meeting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As members may be aware, members of the public may be aware that we were advised that we'd had a request for the application to be referred to the Secretary of State, to the Levelling Up department, to consider as to whether the Secretary of State should determine the application. We were advised that we would be told by now of that decision. They've given a certain time scale to get back to us in, but we've heard today that due to their workload situation, apparently they have had a number of staff redeployed to assist with the Ukraine situation, apparently, and so therefore with many apologies, they have said that they will try to get the decision to us by the end of this week. So with apologies, I was hoping to be able to advise you today, but of course, as soon as I do find out, I'll circulate that information to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, that means that their original appeal on their previous application remains live at the moment.
Yes, indeed. So we do have a public inquiry pending. We have already submitted our statement of case. We have a timetable to meet that's set by PINs, and that doesn't change regardless of what's going on in the background with the current application. Even if we have the confirmation from the Secretary of State that we can proceed to determine the application, and we then issue a planning permission with a Section 106 completed, the applicant may still decide to, that there's then a period of potential judicial review against that decision. So we have to proceed with as if we are contesting a public inquiry, which I think is due to sit. I think we have to get our proofs in by sort of May time. I think it's due to sit in. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm adrift. So the proofs need to be in tomorrow. Are you sure?
Which one are we talking about? Sorry.
Golf club. Yeah. So we just put in our statements in case. Grey hair all round. So I think the appeal date is set for July. So we've still got a bit of a strange twilight period, I suppose, going forward as to what is going to happen with that inquiry. So yes, the planning section are working very hard on public inquiries at the moment. Thank you.
Let's hope that resolves itself one way or another very soon. Anybody want to comment or question any of that? No, thank you. Is there anything else on planning appeals that anybody wanted to say? No, in which case can we move on to item 6, which is applications for prior approval, page 31. Anything to add to that?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to that report.
Anybody got any comment or question on that? No, can we note that then? Thank you. And then we get on to the first of the proposals for local listings on page 37, item 7. And I believe Bruce is here to introduce that.
Yes. I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want to introduce your report briefly?
There's two reports tonight. One is 40 Christchurch Road. It's quite an interesting history. It goes back to the 1850s, and it was a villa built for Lady Henrietta Moore, and also Henry Wallace was a resident, and it's been a local school for 60 years for special needs. It's strongly supported for listing, and it's a very interesting building. The interiors aren't as good, so it would be eligible for redevelopment. That's it.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions or comments on that? No, in which case are we? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rowland, I can just see your hand there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'll always say something about local listings. I also would second this becoming a locally listed building because of the fact that it is one of the last remaining of that group. It's very important that we have some retention and understanding of our past, and this is a very good example. I think that there's also plenty of room on that site for future work, but that's not needed to be gone over during a local listing procedure. But I think this as a showcase piece on that road is very important, and I would heartily endorse this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we see all those in favour of listing that building? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Which takes us on to the second of your reports, Bruce, which is the Palmer Park Pavilion and associated buildings. Do you want to just briefly introduce that report as well? Thank you.
Yes, this is the local park, and it dates from the 1890s, and is part of the legacy of Mr. Palmer of Huntley and Palmer biscuits fame. It has three main buildings which date from that era, which is the 1890s. It's the Residence Caretaker Lodge. There's a little cafe now known as Ethiopian Cafe, and there's still a third building which used to be a toilet block. But if you look in the report, you'll see a photograph of the three buildings, and they may all make a contribution to the park, which dates back to its origin. We also wanted to list the entry gates, which are very significant, and that's something that's in addition to the original nomination form. I'd just like to quickly note that Councillor Rob White and Brenda, I'm going to get in trouble on this.
McGonigal.
Thank you. They both support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Josh Williams, do you want to speak as the ward councillor?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I promised Councillor Challenger I'll speak for as long as I can on this one. So yes, it was me who first put this nomination in and applied for this 18 months ago now. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officer for producing this report. I wanted to say a few things. This report and this local listing, if it goes ahead, doesn't make the three buildings heritage buildings. It recognises them, just as we did with the last one, as part of Reading's heritage. They were there when the park was opened in 1891, an event attended by George Palmer and Daniel Heelis, among others. They were designed by a famous local architect, William Ravenscroft, who's responsible for a number of other buildings around Reading. And for people in East Reading and anyone who visits, they're part of Palmer Park and they're part of Reading, and they have been for 130 years. It was sad to read that the council's team responsible for the buildings didn't fully support the local listing, just as they didn't with the last one. It's distressing in this case that the council has let one of the buildings, which I hope we all agree are of importance to Reading's history and heritage, just to go to rack and ruin, leaving it to the weather to decide if it stays up or not. I'm very grateful to the officer's recommendation to approve. I am worried that Reading's heritage in this case is not yet in safe hands. We also need a toilet in that area, Chair. To say, as the report notes, that the toilets are available in the adjacent cafe will make some local families quite frustrated. It is closed, the cafe that is closed all day Monday, all day Tuesday. It's only open for limited times on the other days. Now, the food from Tutu's is amazing. Anyone who hasn't tried it, I thoroughly recommend it, but it is not the usable public toilet that families deserve in that play area. However, this is about the heritage of these buildings, and I hope we all agree they should be locally listed tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was very glad and appreciative that Councillor Williams had brought this forward, because they are really important buildings. And I'm also even happier that our heritage consultant, Bruce Edgar, appreciated the fact that it needed to be taken even in the wider context with the two gates, because the group asset value of the buildings along with the gates is really, really integral in understanding Victorian design in parks at that time. And I'm very, very happy to support this in that regard. Just an additional note about the toilets. This is not part of the local listing once again, and the future use of that. Let me just put it this way very quickly. Historic buildings evolve and they can change, and their needs and their uses may change in the future. And the toilet block could, for example, be a wonderful opportunity for education and apprenticeships of people that want to learn heritage building skills in terms of improving the building itself. And that is something that I hope very much that we can be looking forward to. The toilets will be quite well provided for with the new facilities, changing places facilities as we go forward. But for this, I'm really delighted and really pleased to have this come forward. And there is no fear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating. Can I see all those in favour of having a local listing for these buildings? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And that takes us on to, I think we will have to take them separately, actually. Item 9 and 10, they're linked, but the street name proposals list edition, which is listed on page, well, the report starts on page 81. And I think Richard Eathoff is going to introduce this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 9 then is additions to the list of new street names to be considered, and the new addition is to name a street after the former Southcote councillor, Councillor Robbie Richardson, as suggested by Councillor Ennis. Please note, unfortunately, there's a misspelling in the table. It should be Bobby,
Yes,
I-E. So the recommendation is to add the name Richardson to that list. Thank you.
Councillor Ennis, I think you proposed this.
I did, and it's much appreciated, Richard, about the spelling, because it's I hope I didn't do that by sending through my email B-O-B-B-I-E, because it's short for Roberta. I mean, Bobby was, I don't want to prolong this, but Bobby was what I would call a true working class hero in Southcote, was a Southcote councillor, but not only a Southcote councillor, but a true advocate for Southcote. It has its detractors, would you believe? I know you won't believe that, but it does. But Bobby was an absolute legend. Her family's there, her family's settled there, a total community advocate, a great councillor, and someone who stood up for Southcote, no matter how you voted, no matter who you were. Proud of her working class roots. One of a million, really. We miss her, and we didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her while others partied, of course. But she wouldn't have been happy with that, I tell you now. And we want to try and make sure her name goes on in her memory as much as possible. We've got a few other things we want to do, and the family and the whole community. There would have been thousands outside for Bobby's funeral, but it was 10. So yes, please, that'd be great if we could do that. And very much tribute to Bobby in her memory.
Thank you, Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could just ask officers to tidy up a couple of typos that have been identified, and Thanks to Evelyn Williams for picking up on these. Fourth one down, Barnes. I think the correct spelling is with an E, as is in the first column, but there's the E missing in the narrative. So if that could just be double checked, please, Chair. And then halfway down under Jim Day, you've got Harvey de Pass. And I think the correct spelling of Harvey, who I remember well, as you do, Chair, as the first Community Relations Officer in Reading, I think the correct spelling is the second one and not the in the first column with the, so it should be with a capital P and not a lowercase. But again, if officers could double check and just make sure that they are identical. That was all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can we agree to the addition of Bobby Richardson to the list, and hopefully the list will get amended on the back of Councillor Page's comments. So all those in favour? Thank you very much. And then a link to item 10 is being asked to choose a name. By page 87 the report starts, and there's 3 suggestions. Richard, do you want to just say a word?
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. So this is the land development. I think it's just started under construction at the rear of 57 Baker Street. 3 options for you. The frontal building, I think, is called Talbot House in reference to William Henry Fox Talbot. So you have the options of Fox Talbot Mews or Fox Talbot Close or Tallow Mews. The word tallow is on the street name proposals listing in the previous report, and if none are considered suitable, you're asked to choose one of the other names on the list, which I believe is the list on item 9. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Page.
Chair, it's a bit of a no-brainer to have the words Fox Talbot, given the close proximity and the history of him and that site. And I would propose that it's Fox Talbot Close. Mews these were never mews, and they aren't being built as mews, and to call them mews when they aren't mews is a bit stretchy in my humble opinion. I know not all my colleagues agree, but a majority do. So I'm proposing, Chair, that we go with Fox Talbot Close, which is very much what it will be. And I hope, whilst the tallow is an interesting and more generic suggestion, it was a relatively short-lived activity in the area, whereas Fox Talbot's presence was much longer and of much greater significance nationally and internationally. So I would propose Fox Talbot Close, Chair.
Happy to second that from the Chair. Can I see all those in favour of Councillor Page's proposal? Thank you. That's unanimous. Right, thank you. That's the end of the all the items that come before the individual planning applications. Now, just to explain, because we have people waiting to speak on some of the items, as we heard earlier, item 12 has been withdrawn. So the 2 items that have public speaking are item 11 and item 14. I have agreed, by speaking to the people who are going to speak to us, that we will take item 14 first to enable the meeting that's happening later of the Local Residents Association to take place. And I believe that it's now David Neal that's going to speak on behalf of the association, and Barry Kitcherside is going to speak as the agent. But first we'll have an introduction from Jonathan Markwell, who is the case officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is item number 14 and starts at page 143 of your agendas. There's also an update report which adds a further condition. The application site comprises land immediately north of Reading Station in central Reading. As existing, it contains the former Royal Mail sorting office and distribution centre. The site is part of the north of the station allocation as per policy CR11E. alongside the currently at appeal Aviva site to the north and the station car park to the east. The site is also within the Station River Major Opportunity Area and the Station Area Tall Buildings Cluster. Comprehensive redevelopment is proposed as part of this outline plan permission application, which provides details on all matters except appearance, which is the sole reserved matter. The proposals are residential led, with 620 units proposed in total, broadly set out in the pattern of 2 large urban perimeter blocks, following the Reading Station Area Framework principles. 2 office buildings are also proposed, together with ground floor retail and related uses to provide the required active frontages. In particular, a community centre and health centre are both proposed, with these considered tangible planning benefits of the scheme by including uses which will support and benefit the local and wider community. These will be secured as such by Section 106 legal agreement. So next slide. In terms of affordable housing, the proposals include the on-site provision of 98 units, which equates to 15.81%. Although this is below the 30% policy requirement, the proposed amount, together with the negotiated deferred contribution mechanism, which will potentially result in further affordable housing being provided should scheme viability improve in time, is considered to be robust and is strongly supported in the context of a presently challenging viability climate. Another important element of the development is the extended and reconfigured Station Square North, which will provide a significant area of public open space on the site. This will make a positive contribution towards the quality of the public realm in the central area and will be secured in full via the legal agreement. This area links into the Avenue Spine Road, whereby a new access point off Caversham Road creates a west to east highway connection route along the northern boundary of the site. This will help facilitate greater pedestrian and cycle permeability as policy CR11 requires. The application has demonstrated it is part of a comprehensive approach by working up 2 options, one with the road provided from the application site with access points to the north linking into the Aviva site, and then secondly, the route being provided within the Aviva site and connecting into the application site. The applicant has agreed to the principle of whichever developer is first to construct the spine road is agreeable to permit access to the adjacent site, avoiding the need for parallel service roads. This is considered appropriate for this application and will be secured by legal agreement. Next slide, please. So in terms of the scale of the buildings proposed, the tallest element of the scheme, Building A, is adjacent to the station as policy and guidance requires. The basement and 24 stories is undoubtedly significant, but in the context of the prevailing emerging position within the station area cluster of tall buildings, most personally the approved Station Hill North, the proposals would positively contribute to the area and would be sufficiently slender in its form too. In overall term, it complies with policy and guidance and is supported. On the southern side of the site, the massing appropriately steps down away from the station, and on the northern side of the site, the massing decreases more considerably beyond Building A, responding to the avenue and not unduly compromising the future development of the separate site to the north. On the Caversham Road frontage, the massing broadly complies with the guidance benchmark heights. The urban dual carriageway of Caversham Road provides a suitable break which enables the proposed massing to be acceptable against the backdrop of the lower scale to the west. In overall terms, whilst the officer report does identify some harmful impacts, such as, for example, less than substantial harm caused to the Grade 2 listed station building and 2 conservation areas, and a lack of sunlight to the proposed private courtyard areas, Officers conclude that the conflicts with the development plan will be outweighed by the benefits of the proposals. These include the redevelopment of an allocated site within a major opportunity area, located in a highly accessible and sustainable location. The mix of uses is welcome, with the inclusion of 98 on-site affordable housing units and the community and health centres being particular benefits. The proposals would also facilitate greater pedestrian and cycle permeability and a remodelled Station Square North, which provides a significant area of public on-site open space. The development will successfully and positively knit into the existing and potentially future urban grain, movement patterns and infrastructure to deliver what is considered to be a proposal which in overall terms meets the NPPF objective of achieving sustainable development. As such, outline plan permission is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and Section 106 obligations summarised within the reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We now take the public speaking, and the first person, I believe, from the Bell Tower Association is Mr. Neil, David Neil. Good evening. Would you like to introduce yourself, and then that we won't knock that off your 5 minutes? Thank you.
Okay, it's David Neal from the Bell Tower Community Association, and we represent residents in the Caversham Road area. We certainly have our concerns with this development. The most obvious one for residents on the west side of Caversham Road, where we are, of course, is that it's completely out of scale with that side of the road. It's opposite a locally listed former malt house, of course, the former Drew's building, which got local listing in 2020. And at that time, the planning inspector's comment, bear in mind, of course, the developer went to appeal on that one and the appeal was dismissed. The planning inspector's comment was, these benefits do not outweigh the significant harm the proposal would have on the character and appearance of the area. And of course, that was for a 7-storey building. We're now talking about up to 8 stories on the other side. Yes, we understand, of course, that there is likely to be a step up on the other side. We also believe, though, it's too great a step up compared with a maximum of 3 stories on the other side. And considering that Caversham Road is a wide road, but not that wide, you're still talking about quite a large thing on the horizon. The analogy I thought when I saw the development is almost like walking alongside a battleship. It's a great big building on one side and low rise on the other side. The development also could obviously have an effect on Caversham Road itself. Once on that side, of course, you get a development. On the other side, of course, there could be an argument that higher developments could be produced. So this was certainly used as part of the argument in the Malt House case. Another concern we have is that building A at the eastern end, which is 24 stories, that is also opposite the locally listed part of the SSE building, the older part of that building, which I understand was a candidate at one point for national listing. The reports from the planning officers also refers to Historic England's comments that proposals would cause harm to the settings of Marketplace and London Street and to the St Peter's Conservation Area in Caversham. And it seems to me that that's not been fully addressed. Another concern we have is also only around half of the normal social housing requirement is being provided here, so around 15.8% compared with the normal 30%. None of this also appears to be suitable for families, are generally small units, so therefore itself not in full compliance. A concern we also have is a lack of desirability for some of the flats. It's very dense. Sunlight and daylight look pretty limited at lower floors. The proposed townhouses alongside the railway line, we understand the idea of the active frontage, but we can't see those being desirable because you'd have essentially flats on one side and a high railway embankment on the other. doesn't seem to me to be a very desirable place. So whether it would they'd really make a contribution towards that avenue, we don't know. Another concern we also have is the green space, and or rather lack of, within the development. The planning officer comments that it's pretty much the minimum permissible. We do believe more should be provided, and itself the green space is going to be subjected to a lot of shadowing, so there won't actually be a great deal of sunlight on it. So again, not a particularly desirable space. One of the advantages that's pointed out is the possibility of a health centre. Now, of course, while we appreciate that would be a good thing, I'm also we ourselves are a bit hesitant about that. Experience suggests, of course, that provision of a health centre is not in the developer's or the council's gift. It's something which the NHS has to decide on. Of course, we remember the case of the Battle Hospital development, where I believe there was some money put aside for that, but the NHS didn't want to build there. So, yes, all very well, but it may not be quite as big a benefit as claimed. Another point we've also noticed is the local plan shows a scope for 640 to 960 residential units to the north of the station. And that's the entire area up to Vaston Road. Now, this site, looking at the plan, represents around half or even less of the area of that. And they're trying to squeeze in 620 units into that. So the argument we would have is, surely this represents overdevelopment. Finally, we believe overall we understand the need for housing, but the lack of desirability of a large part of the development and the density of it, and the fact that it does represent a higher density than is really required. In the end, we just feel that it will not be a particularly desirable place to live. It provides something more akin to a characterless dormitory, rather than something which the north side of the station really deserves. If you compare it with the glitz of the... Sorry,
that's 5 minutes.
Am I by 5 minutes?
That's 5 minutes, Chair.
OK, just to say, we believe the area deserves better if you compare it with the other side of the station. Thank you.
If you'd like to stay there in case there's any questions from members of the committee. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask now? No, I'm not seeing anybody. So if not, then thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for your comments. And we'll move on to the applicant, who is also here, I believe, and that's Barry Kitcherside.
That's correct. From you tonight, and thank you for making this provision for me.
Thank you. When, if you'd like, just explain who you are, and then we'll start your 5 minutes. Thank you.
I'm the planning consultant acting for the applicant in this regard.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this application, good evening, sorry, Chair and members. This application has been a long time in its gestation period, negotiated over extremely challenging times, where we sought to work with your officers on the regeneration of this significant central brownfield site, where a previous planning consent acknowledged the development principles. There's been an overriding want of your authority to bring this site forward for development, which is allocated within your local plan for an intensive mixed-use development. Prior to the submission of the application, we undertook extensive public consultation of various forms, including meetings, drop-in meetings, a pop-up stand with a model outside of Reading Station, newsletters, et al. This application seeks to establish the base principles of the development. Should members be minded to grant consent this evening, we will work with those who have shown an interest in the application in order to progress the details required as referenced in the officer's report. Importantly, the Royal Mail Depot is a salient central location where its current commercial land use is highly sought after, and where we have received interest from high-profile organisations. However, we believe our mixed-use redevelopment approach will rejuvenate this area, act as a catalyst for surrounding development sites to come forward and to deliver a greater benefit to the centre of Reading. The conception of much-needed enhanced landscaping, as Mr Mark will reference, outside of the northern entrance of the railway station, is amongst many items included in our substantial Section 106 offer, as listed in the officer's report. It's pointed out that the tree-lined avenue linking the station to Caversham Road, as well as improved north to south links to connect in the future hopeful redevelopment of Vaston Court. It's however essential to remind you that this site can remain developed in isolation should the Aviva site not come forward or be consented or whatever. We are entirely within our own rights to develop this land holding as referenced under cover of the planning application and the highway works agreed by your highway authority. The proposals are generally high quality throughout. This is a genuine mixed-use scheme which includes new private and affordable homes, office space, retail and support accommodation, including this new healthcare facility, which could be either any healthcare facility, we're not labelling it at this moment in time, and a community hub. With regard to both these uses, as Mr. Michael indicated, they're both within our Section 106 offerings where we happily gift those. We are in discussion also with the officers in bringing forward of a planning condition orchestrated to ensure that the high quality reference to the application material is secured as we hopefully move forward with the design detailing and eventual procurement. Enhanced biodiversity with exemplary high levels of energy efficiency are proposed as referenced in the officers' report. Working with your officers, the scheme has been revised in scale with reductions in building heights in line with your council's aspirations for this immediate area. The development form is submissive to the Station Hill scheme whilst reflecting this central location. Importantly, the on-site provision of 98 affordable homes of various times against extremely challenging viability environment is in contrast to no or very low affordable housing delivery on other central Reading schemes. We are also responding to local need for 3-bed family housing, providing in excess of the authorities' guidelines. The viability has not got less challenging over the last 6 months, as we all bear witness to, rising construction costs and labour costs, where through the price of money, the market is moving in a period of uncertainty. It is for this reason we seek to hold our position and seek a favourable determination at tonight's committee meeting. It is anticipated we work as soon as possible on the reserve matters through further engagement with the officers and the residents. It's important to point out that my client is engaging with a development partner who has already been introduced to your authority. We do thank the officers for working with us, as challenging as it may have been, and importantly, their confidence in the application by recommending to you this proposal for approval this evening. Thank you, Chair and members.
Thank you very much. If you could stay on the line in case members have any questions. Anybody want to? Councillor Page and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Barry, for your introduction. It's Councillor Tony Page here. 2 questions. Firstly, you've touched on it at the end of your remarks, and it's also referenced in the email we received from Mr. Heyman yesterday, and that's the statement in there that an investor and developer are on board ready to proceed with the reserve matters application. Well, obviously there's like to be more than one reserve matters application, but I wonder if you could just say a bit more about that, because there is a view amongst some of us that this is a site that's ripe for onward sale, and that we're likely to be faced with a site that then gets passed around and resold and development thereby delayed, particularly as it's an outline application. And the second of a more specific element, and I wonder if you could say a bit more about the handful of townhouses that you are proposing on the site. There's reference in paragraph on page 212, Jonathan Markwell provides some commentary about them appearing somewhat diminutive adjacent to taller buildings and other issues. But I wonder if you could just say a bit more about how you came to bring forward that element, and whether that is probably the best location for them, because it does beg the question as to whether or not, and picking up on Mr. Neal's point, whether that sort of lower level development might be better accommodated towards the west of the site. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to that before I call Councillor Williams? Yeah.
Yes, by all means. Firstly, the bringing on board of the partner is very live. It's very real. We're not in contract at this moment in time. We haven't got a planning consent, but rest assured that details will come forward with the various planning applications. A timescale will be set and established immediately. We know we have certain traction with your authority. We're going to contract mode and we'll expose everybody to your authority as you require. In fact, we have already started that process in the engagement that we had during lockdown. So this is not somebody trading in a planning consent. This is somebody that wants to deliver the development, and that's very, very, very important. My client is not of that ilk on this particular landholding. Going back to the comment regarding the enclave of low density, low rise accommodation, bearing in mind what's going on in that particular location, we believe that it's a bookend, and that's kind of sort of addressed some. It's quite difficult to explain, but to address a weakness we believed in that area. And that access road that runs parallel to the railway, it's sort of formed a sort of a picture frame to that frontage. Except from looking at it, it just looks a bit odd, but I really believe in context that really works. And they are individual houses, they're in their own right. And I think from a townscape perspective, they're not disordinate. And we've looked at this and we've agonised over this with the planning officers, and this kind of bookend was generally supportive at a very early stage. Not an architectural response, Mr. Page. I know Councillor Page that you were looking for, but that's my opinion as a planning consultant.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Kitcherside, for speaking to us tonight. I've got a question. We read in our report that the pollution may be so bad for future occupiers that mechanical ventilation is required. Can you say a bit more about what that mechanical ventilation is, and whether those future occupiers could presumably never open a window?
There's new processes coming onto the market that provides adequate means of ventilation. The short answer is yes, windows will be able to be opened. We've singled out just a few that could have a problem at this very moment in time. There's not very many, and I'm very happy to accept a condition on that particular point if you are overly concerned about it.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I was trying to understand how that mechanical ventilation might work with an open window, rather than setting a condition at this stage. But maybe I could ask officers later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for Barry for your presentation. Barry, you know, obviously this is outline planning permission, and if this were to be granted, there's many things and ideas that will emerge about how this is actually going to begin to look in terms of the public open space, in terms of the public art that is supposedly going to be set out Section 106, which I'm very pleased to see, and also in the actual design of the buildings. Right now, residents and many people can sit down there and look at the basic items that we're staring at. I don't know whether you've seen them, but well, you've obviously seen them, but you're not seeing them. They are the basic shapes and outlines of the buildings that show the buildings stepping down from your 24-story building on over to the 8 stories over on Caversham Road. You talked to us about the possibility to engage further with the community, and I would like to know how that is going to take shape. I'm going to go back to David Neal's statement, Councillor Page's statement about concerns about these small townhouses. That was something that I know that the bell tower community was not fond of. I know that I registered my concerns on it too. So I'm kind of wondering how you're taking community interaction on board, and in the design and development of these buildings going forward, how will the communities be involved, and what is that going to shape up and look like?
First of all, regarding the public art, we will share with you and have the various competitions and artists available for generic discussion with residents, as well as obviously my client. Insofar as it relates to further engagement with the local authority, let's just understand that this is an outline planning application. A lot of the matters in terms of siting, etc., of the various modules and massing and townscape are here for consideration tonight. If there are any significant areas of concern, I think they've got to be raised and voiced. I've got no problem with that. But in terms of the elevational treatment and finishes, etc., we will set up a series of, as we've done in the past with your authority and other authority, workstations with a selected group of residents, together with our consultants, to move forward to bring this to the boil on a comprehensive collective basis.
Do you want to follow up on that, Councillor Rowland?
Yeah, so what you're saying basically, and the reason I brought up the townhouses, because that was one thing. I know that in the public consultations came forward very strongly, amongst other things. I know there were concerns from the communities about the height of the building. It was lowered 1 story, I believe. So I'm kind of wondering how much the community is going to be able to have something heard and to be able to ensure that their comments are taken on board. So I guess some kind of clarity. Is it going to look like your other consultations that you had, or how is that? Yeah, if you could provide any more clarity.
Yeah, as far as it relates to the height, bulk and massing, this follows, and I have to say this follows the script set through your plan policy. The heights here are clearly referenced within all that, but the design and the detail of that is not fixed, and that's up for consideration. And yes, we will engage, and how we want to deal with that, you can deal with it through an informative within this planning application. Very happy with that. The bulk and massing is up for consideration. If the townhouses are an overriding concern, I don't believe they should be. If they're an overriding concern, we could revisit that element through a condition of sorts, if Mr. Markle can come forward with something. But we will engage. We've engaged before, and it will not be a problem for us. It will not be a problem for us. But we need to move forward with this. To respond to another question, is this going to be traded in and people make money out of a piece of paper? No, that's not the case. We are in a very delicate stage. This is not putting the residents to one side, make no mistake about it, but we're at a very delicate stage in the field of property. Building costs are rising like there's no tomorrow. Money is going to be a difficult problem. The world we're going to live in 18 months' time, hopefully, if we can get through all the worldwide issues that we're going at this moment, that's going on, are really challenging to developments such as this. But this needs to come forward, and it needs to come forward collectively, and we will work with you. We will work with your residents and memberships to bring something forward that you support. There might be some gaps that we can't have an understanding and a reasoning on, but you know, the general presumption is we will work with you, and I haven't got a problem with that.
Councillor Page, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, could I just pick up on the issue of the reserved matters? One of the amendments that we've got in our update pack is that design code should be submitted and approved building by building, which I think is a very sensible proposal. The issue of heights of a building are not something that cause me in principle concern. It is the design and the impact of that building. And you've just said, Mr. Kitcherside, that building costs are rising. And one of the concerns that some of us have is that the first cuts and economies will be made will be on the design of the building, and that we will therefore be faced with pretty bog standard and utilitarian blocks, which would not be acceptable. And therefore, I suppose I'm really asking you, and obviously you can't commit at this stage, but to what extent will the architects for this scheme be, I don't know whether they've been chosen yet, but the brief for them is obviously one that's quite important. And I would want to see certainly the design reserved matters dealt with at committee and a raft of other ones rather than dealt with under delegations. We'll come on to that in the committee discussion, Chair, but I think the design of these buildings, Mr. Kitcherside, is of critical importance in selling the scheme, not only to prospective residents, but also to neighbours. And that's the sort of reassurance that I think I would want to hear from you, if possible, at this stage, about the extent to which design will be allowed to flourish and not be constrained at an early stage. Thank you.
Councillor Page, I mentioned earlier on in my speech that we support the idea of a condition or series of conditions regarding codes of design. Something I'm doing on another site, which is albeit next to a listed building, but we have no problem with that, and we encourage that, and we've supported that, and I've gone into print. The architect currently is being carried forward into the development, so this is going to be conceived by the architect and taken forward in a detailed design. So TP Bennett, you know, they've got a household name. They know the territory, they know the personalities, and they know the format, the design, development, and all matters associated. But so this is not going to be passed on to the table for sort of generic design and build, and someone's going to go and mimic and slavish it and slash the finishes. That's not the desire here. To achieve the kind of financial viability, we've got to produce the right product, and you've got to see the right product, and the local residents have got to enjoy the right product. So I have not got a problem with the planning conditions suggested. We support them.
I'm not seeing anybody else wanting to. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Barry, and thank you to Mr. Neil too. It was just, my issue is with any site that has an off-site contribution option is the phasing. You know, most of the, I think Mr. Neil mentioned, the health centre and the affordable homes are in Block G, which I think, if I've got my never eat shredded wheat, is on the west of the site, and it's a phase 6. So, as you mentioned, there are viability issues. So I'm just wondering that all the properties for sale will be built, and then later on down the line, there's an option to take the off-site contribution, and we don't get our affordable housing. I'd like to see them get those 7 3-bedroom houses as well, but that's probably not an option. So yeah, that would be my issue with the phasing, to make sure that the community centre, health centre gets built along with the affordable housing in good time. I don't want to see it backloaded and then possibly not get done. As you state, we're getting 15.8. You know, not the 30% that would be an ideal policy, but I do understand that with raising costs and stuff, it is an issue. Raising wages are a good thing with me, as I always state. So not so much of an option. Thank you.
There is a phased approach to this, as you will see in the application report produced by Mr. Markwell, which defines which areas are being constructed and when they're being constructed and what sequence they're being constructed. And I do understand the point, but the idea is to have the affordable on site. It's not the intention to take it off the site. Make no mistake about it. That's within our remit.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously it's not your aim, but it's with viability issues, it's always an option because there is an off-site contribution option. So we understand that brownfield sites, you know, are relatively few and far between in Reading. So when we get a brownfield site like this, we as councillors should push as hard as we can and hold people's feet to the fire to get the affordable housing. So we'll hold you to that if this passes. Thank you. So.
I think we've been held to the fire with the greatest respect. And if you look at this site and compare it to other sites, as I've said earlier on, we are producing affordable housing. We're producing a quantum of affordable housing, which is in excess of a lot of people in this geographical location, and we're providing family housing in excess of your standards. So we're really doing the right thing. And I couldn't promote this in any other way than I believe this is it's gone beyond really what we intended here, but you know, we want the scheme, and we want the scheme quickly because of all the reasons I indicated to you earlier on. This is a pivotal moment in the history of development in this country, right over this next sort of 12 months. So we're carrying a development forward over a 3-year period when we don't know what's going to exist. If we snap it now, work hard with your guys now, this site will come forward. If it lies sterile for a few more years, we don't know what's going to happen. On that site at this moment in time, so it's a very valuable piece of real estate, and that Royal Mail facility is really much sought after, and that should not be allowed to happen, but it's available to happen if this scheme doesn't go forward. That's no pressure threat by any stretch of the imagination. We want to do this scheme. My client has got the money to do it. He's got third parties who are ready to rock up and work for the development. You've got an architect that has been with this from this application from cradle, hopefully to grave, and we will continue to work with your authority, work with the membership, work with the local residents.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else wanting to ask a question, so thank you very much for your introduction and indeed stopping on to answer all those questions. Obviously you want to stop online and listen to what's said. I'll now throw it open to the committee for comment or any questions to officers and so on. Councillor Page.
Chair, this is obviously one of the most important sites left in the Reading area, and it's of critical importance and rightly identified as such, not only in the local plan, but also in the report in front of us this evening. I suppose it's regrettable in one sense that we don't have an application, a single application that covers both this site and the adjoining site. And that raises obviously the issue of servicing and access. I'll come on to that in a minute. In overall terms, this is a site that has been designated for high density residential. And whilst I respect the points that David Neal made earlier, I would emphasise the fact and the point that's made in the report that the figures in our local plan are very much indicative and are not a maximum or minimum. And clearly the assumptions that underpin those figures at the local plan stage were very much more high level, and each site was subject to a much more cursory examination, but nonetheless went through a rigorous process of local plan validation. But the figures are only indicative. And I think what we have before us this evening is a development that is broadly in line with our policies and aspirations. It doesn't deliver the 30% affordable in one go, but it delivers an important half initially, and through the deferred mechanisms, we are reassured, and I think the word is robust in the report, that we have, yes, on page 165, the proposed offer, the affordable housing offer, is considered to be robust and is strongly supported, and that's with the assistance of independent external advice as well. So Councillor Lang's quite right to raise the issue, but to secure this level of affordable housing is, I think, a quite commendable element of the proposals. The phasing of the development has been picked up by Councillor Lang as well, and I suppose inevitably a development of this size is always going to be phased, just like Station Hill to the south is phased. But I suppose the question is, we're hoping for phasing that is a matter of over a couple of years or 3 years, rather than a phasing that drags on. And we certainly would wish for the community and health elements to be delivered as soon as possible. But one could argue from a developer's point of view that the full benefit of those and the full use of those facilities is only likely to emerge once the bulk of the development has been completed. So the viability of a community centre or a health centre in the very first phase is obviously questionable because nobody's there on the site. So there is a balance to be struck. Just on the health centre, I was absolutely flabbergasted at the comments reported from the primary care manager's response listed on page 180. I had to read it twice, I just didn't believe it. The CCG are not aware of any local need for an existing practice to seek relocation to newly built premises, and the comments there and in the following paragraph, what they are singularly in a very narrow-minded way doing is just focusing on this development when we know that there is development coming on the SSE site, where development will be coming further down the road, where there is development obviously underway on Station Hill, and whether it be a doctor's surgery or, as is rightly said later on page 213 of the report, where Jonathan Markwell rightly points out in paragraph 6.3.14, the health use is flexible. Indeed, Mr. Kitcherside just made that point. It could, for example, entail a GP surgery or dentist, so there is a flexible use there. But I would have thought that it was pretty self-evident that with the level of population growth in town, this sort of facility is required, as with the community centre. The issue, Chair, of the townhouses, I think, has been covered already, and there'll obviously be further work on this. Can I just pick up on the point that Mr. Neal made about Caversham Road, because this is important, and it did feature in the Drews appeal. This site is clearly identified as a high-density site with a lower level of density immediately on Caversham Road, but not of a density that is at the same height as the opposite side of Caversham Road. And it was quite clear in the policy framework, and the inspector accepted this, that the east side of Caversham Road, the site on which we're discussing, would have that higher rise development immediately along or close to Caversham Road. The argument that we pressed and were successful with in respect of the Drews site was that we didn't want to create a canyon by having unnecessarily and inappropriately high buildings on the west side. And the inspector accepted that our policies, both for this site, for the Drews site, and also for the site that's occupied by Sureguard, would be very much focused on a lower rise development. And I understand that the Carter site, just a few yards to the north of Sureguard, that's been sold, they are now looking to start pre-app on very much lower rise residential, and we'll obviously hear more of that in due course. But I think the scale of development that's proposed on Caversham Road is broadly in line with what we envisaged. But this is the critical point: the design of all these buildings is fundamental to the success of this site, and none of the design is being dealt with this evening. And it's important to emphasise the sentence on page 154, which Jonathan Markwell has rightly said: accordingly, to clarify, appearance matters have not been assessed and will only be considered at reserved matters stage, should outline permission be granted. Which is why the additional recommendation in our update pack this evening is so important, that the submission and approval of design codes building by building should be submitted concurrently with reserved matters applications. And I'd like to propose, Chair, that the design reserved matters are dealt with by full committee, that is sufficiently important and fundamental an element, and I would hope that would further get the message, reinforce the message to the developer that consultations with the local community are important, because we as a full committee will be looking to approve those, and obviously the facility for public speaking and engagement exists at this committee, but it's much more important that the developer builds in that meaningful consultation on detailed design in respect of all of these buildings. Landscaping is another matter, Chair, which I believe that we should bring to full committee. And the landscaping of this site is very important, and I think people have been a bit dismissive, and with respect to David Neal, I think being a bit dismissive of the potential that is represented in what's called the new station square. Certainly that represents a major opportunity for us to literally establish a very impressive gateway to the station and also this development. There's clearly other landscaping elements that are important throughout the site, but the station square landscaping is, as is mentioned on page 170, it's a very a key gateway space, and consideration should be given to a water feature, statue, other forms of public art, and Councillor Rowland's rightly referred to that. So I would also add that to a list to come back to committee. And Chair, just wrapping up on two further points, the sustainability and energy progress that's been made during the discussions over the last few years are rightly summarised on page 217 towards the end of Jonathan Markwell's very comprehensive report. The point on page 217, pertinent to note, the scheme's been designed to accommodate a future connection to a wider district heating scheme, and that is important, along with the other points. The photovoltaics, I almost regard PVs on top of buildings as the equivalent of a plug in a room. It's basic, it shouldn't even really, I mean, it's so obvious, but nonetheless, it is important to the site. And then lastly, on the connectivity through the site, and this is probably a question as much to Darren Cook, if he's online. On page 226, which is his appendix 2, which is the lengthy observations, in paragraph 2.17 on page 226, there's reference to the advisory cycle lanes, which are obviously an important element through this site. We've got the bridge, we've got the SSE site, however that finally turns out, and the importance of cycle connections across Faston Road and into this site, and also through the station, and we welcome the contribution towards the underpass. But one thing I'm unclear of, and I thought now that the DFT, certainly in terms of funding local authority cycling schemes, is requiring segregated cycleways. And I'm just a bit concerned that the advisory cycle lanes are merely just a bit of paint. Now, if we're going to be delivering segregated cycle lanes on our public highway, which the DFT now require us to do, and I think that's quite right, and it will form a feature of the Bath Road scheme, just as it's forming a feature of the Shinfield Road scheme, I would not want to see a downgraded offer within this development. So I've gone down to a very specific question here, Chair, and I'm asking, therefore, why we are not requiring segregated cycle lanes in this scheme in the same way as we are required to provide elsewhere. But, Chair, could I therefore move that we adopt the officer recommendation and that we bring forward to full committee for subsequent determination reserved matters to do with design and landscaping, and indeed any other matters that colleagues might wish to bring to committee? Thank you, Chair.
Should we just deal with that, if Darren's there, can we just deal with the issue about cycleways while we're thinking about it, and then I'll call Councillor Williams.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. As part of the application discussions, we have reviewed the requirement of what type of cycle facility would best suit the site. Obviously, we were going back initially for discussions in 2018 and 19 when we first started the discussion. So we were basing our assessment on the guidance at that time, and obviously since then some of the guidance has changed. But I think we're comfortable in terms of the discussions I've had internally within the team that the advisory cycle lanes would be sufficient to run through the site. The design is compliant with the DFT local transport note 120 in terms of the dimensions and the specifications of that. So it is still a kind of a cycle facility that would be sufficient in terms of those requirements. The actual vehicular movement within the site would be relatively limited. There's limited car parking spaces on site, which obviously we're acceptable with, but the number of movements through the site would be limited. So the road network itself and those advisory cycle lanes would be, in all intents and purposes, that the main function would be for cyclists, even though they are advisory cycle lanes. So it would be mainly for their use. I think as well, in terms of the design, in having a dedicated cycle facility on both sides of the road, or providing a two-way cycle lane as well as a carriageway for two-way traffic, it then further increases that kind of provision and that width that would be required, that then kind of starts to reduce down the pedestrian environment for those residents and those commuters that are walking through the site. So we are comfortable that the design that has been put forward is sufficient in this case.
Okay, Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'd like to ask if we can get any more information on the mechanical ventilation that will save future occupiers from breathing NO2, I think the report says, and how that will work, and whether future residents will be able to open a window in their property.
Okay, thank you. If Jonathan's able to add to that at this stage.
I can try. Thanks for the question, Councillor Williams. I'll probably refer you to, I think, the paragraph you outlined in your question to the agent in terms of paragraph 4.2.5 of the officer report. And obviously that goes into detail saying that there will essentially be a planning condition which will seek and secure further details. So my understanding, without being obviously an environmental protection officer, but planning officer, would be in kind of simple terms that the exact ventilation system the details haven't been provided at this juncture, and as such the planning condition will secure that full strategy whereby the applicant will need to provide a full and robust system to ensure the quality of the accommodation for the future occupiers. So I don't think I can answer at this stage whether windows will be open or shut. I think the agent provided some clarification in his answer, giving you some hopeful reassurance, stating that he would. I think ultimately it would be determined and detailed through the subsequent planning condition which we've recommended.
And could indeed be something that comes back to committee along with all the other things we talked about.
Could I request that it does?
Yes, absolutely. I think Councillor Leng, you were next, and then Councillor Rowland.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sort of linked to Councillor Page's bit about segregated cycle lanes. I know it's 200,000 towards the upgrading and improving the underpass beneath the Reading station, so it's suitable for cyclists. I mean, it's probably stated the obvious, but I probably missed it in the papers. But obviously, cyclists have to dismount to go under there at the moment. Does that mean they're going to have a separate cycle lane where they can just whiz straight through without having to get off their bikes?
Darren?
Thank you, Chair. The council are looking at proposals at the moment that will raise the roof essentially to allow for cyclists to go through there, but it would be a shared facility for pedestrians and cyclists to go through. So the full details aren't kind of agreed at this stage, but we're looking at initially just the raising of the roof level, because it doesn't allow for cyclists to go through. Obviously it's too low, and you'd have cyclists potentially hitting their head as they go through. So that's what that contribution is for, but we are looking at providing that as a cycle facility through that underpass.
I'm not seeing. Oh, Councillor Rowland, apologies. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to bring back up the buildings about TH1 and TH2 and what possibly could be done about those if indeed they're found to have insufficient sunlight, an insufficient way of addressing those to be a good living environment. The current situation is where they're situated, that when the persons come out of their front doors onto this new road or whatever, they will still nonetheless be faced with a tall wall that is basically the retaining wall for the railway line, right straight in front of them at some distance, but that's still their view. Surrounding that will be a number of taller buildings that will constantly affect the lighting for those units. Instead of energizing and being, I'm extremely welcome for houses. I'm welcoming of houses. It's a wonderful idea. I just again do not know if that is the right place to deliver them, and I'm wondering about the mechanism that ever exists, or if we sit down here and sign this off this evening, that we're going to get those houses in that location. I think that the speaker had mentioned that there could be some flexibility. I'm wanting to understand a little bit better about that. So that's one question, one concern I have. I also wanted to get Jonathan Markwell's thoughts in section 6.7.72, page 217 that Councillor Page brought up. I was encouraged to read the fact that there is the possibility of looking to improve, hang on just a second while I get to that page myself, to look at the possibilities of open loop ground source heating and water source heat pump technologies. Because things are progressing so quickly, and even things have progressed during the lifetime of this application. So I'm wanting to know how likely that's going to be, but as the agent described earlier, the spiraling cost and everything could possibly prohibit something like that kind of exploration to doing something really environmentally positive. I'm wondering if the number crunching would disallow that actually happening in the future. So I just wanted some thoughts on those, on that question. So those are primarily my two main concerns. Yes, one other. The agent did promise me, I asked him and I prodded him again about the community engagement, and I do realize that we will be bringing forward the approval of these individual, the landscaping, the different buildings and things like that. I heard a promise there. Forgive me if I don't see that promise written down in the conditions about engagement with community, and I may have skimmed over that. But could that promise somehow be conditioned? I know he wants to go at breakneck speed, but I also think bringing along the community is important. And I would also add to that list of things that we might want to see, or that we'll want to review going forward is about the place, space, facility details too. So, thank you.
Do you want to just respond to that now, Jonathan?
Sure. I think in total there's probably kind of 4 points to go through. So I'll take them in turn, hopefully, if I've written them all down. So the first one was in terms of townhouses and potential concerns in terms of future access to kind of daylight and sunlight. There is a condition which sees kind of a fuller daylight and sunlight assessment, which is recommended to be submitted concurrently with the reserve matters applications to basically undertake that fuller assessment, which is deliberate on officers' part, so that if there are shortfalls in access to daylight and sunlight to those townhouses, then there is scope for those to be considered at the same time. And there are various mitigation and ways to improve levels of daylight and sunlight, which can be through kind of the reducing recesses within the windows, which then means that essentially the windows are closer to the face of the buildings to kind of maximise daylight and sunlight. And then obviously the other obvious step would be to increase the size of windows within those townhouses. They are kind of dual aspect in form in terms of having a northern and a southern outlook. I think officers acknowledge that obviously there's kind of competing demands between those townhouses needing to perform kind of a role in terms of the railway walk, in terms of activating that frontage and helping with passive surveillance, providing the townhouses. So we've kind of weighed up the pros and cons, and I think officers' viewpoint is that we're satisfied with the principle of the townhouses, and further details via condition will ensure their suitable quality. Moving on to the second point, in terms of sustainability, obviously the advice which we've had from our independent consultants, Element Energy, were that there was scope to incorporate, to explore whether kind of those open loop ground source heat pumps or water source heat pumps could be used, obviously given that we're fairly close to the river there, rather than kind of the air source heat pumps. So essentially the SAP assessment conditions will bring that out, whereby the strategy will need to be kind of further advanced and detailed, and as part of that, then the applicant will explore those technologies to ensure that it is considered. So again, it's something which will come out through the conditions. Moving on to the kind of third main question, which was in terms of community engagement, and in terms of the applicant or the agent specifying in just earlier that he was committed to kind of publicly to undertake kind of those workshop meetings. I think Councillor Rowland's main question was in terms of whether we could formalise that through a condition. I think my initial thoughts would be that it wouldn't be something that we could formally kind of condition as part of the planning application or permission here. Obviously, if the legal colleagues want to step in and tell me otherwise, then feel free. But I think the most that we could do as officers would be to add that as a informative and a strong expectation that prior to the submission of those future reserve matters applications, then the expectation would be for community engagement to take place and for that to be detailed and summarised within their future submission, to ensure that transparency and the kind of two-way communication in terms of the applicant demonstrating that they have done it, and then for the benefit of local residents and the community, they can see and it can be demonstrated to them the exact process which is being undertaken, and whether the commentary within that submission backs up in terms of the points which have been raised earlier in terms of the applicant kind of following through on that consultation. So I think in answer there, no for a condition, but yes for an informative, and I think it could be that that's included within the minutes to this committee meeting as well, just to make it, just to make sure that that is abundantly clear to the applicant in due course. And then I think the final question was in terms of reviewing the place-based facilities and that returning to committee for future consideration. And I think the very short and succinct answer there is yes, of course that's possible, and there'd be no principal issue with doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are you coming back, Councillor, around here?
I will. Just to thank Jonathan for those comments. I'm perfectly happy if we make it a strong informative. I do believe that he expressed some reasonableness in engagement with the community, and I think that we can. I think the record will kind of speak for itself in that. So I'm fine and happy with that. I would just continue to hold on to my concerns about TH1 and TH2. I respect the fact that you might suspect that making the windows larger or reducing the windowsill depth or something like that is going to bring more light into those houses. But I kind of take umbrage with that when I'm looking at what I'm looking at here, but I've not, you know, I just don't see that that's going to perhaps resolve the problems. So I still will just register my concerns about those. I don't think that they are enough for me to actually vote against this application, which I otherwise feel is overall a good outline application. I feel it is very encompassing, so I'm really pleased with the conditions as we can work through this together. I hope very positively with the applicant. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got Councillor Robinson, Councillor Ennis and Councillor Page just want to come back on something. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly welcome this application, very ambitious in many ways. I do have concerns over the size of the buildings fronting onto Caversham Road, purely based upon what it must be like for the houses and buildings opposite in terms of available sunlight, etc. The other thing I just wanted to clarify really is this application is for 620 residential units. It also mentions office accommodation, flexible ground floor shop, financial or professional services or restaurant and cafe. Then I look at the element about parking and I see 94 spaces, 70 at basement level. The question I would ask, is that really adequate for such a development, but also including if you are looking at office accommodation and various other elements? I appreciate that the railway station is right next door, and certainly public transport is very good to this particular part of the town centre, except for the fact that I cannot get over the fact that 94 spaces with 620 residential units is, I think, going to be difficult to manage, in that I think a lot of people, if they do buy places there, will have cars and may end up using the Reading railway station car park or somewhere else. We do have to consider that, I feel. So that is another concern of mine. Thank you, Chair. Madam Chair.
Thank you. I've now got Councillor Ennis.
Yeah, I was going to, thank you, Chair. I was going to raise the points about the affordable housing, and whilst, you know, we use the words hold developers to the fire regarding 30%, I do accept the discussions from the agent regarding as to why the figures are there. We would want more, and we would say that, wouldn't we? But we feel the points you made, for me, are, you know, reassuring, in that I will be supporting the application tonight, and I would agree with Councillor Page to bring back the actual detail to a full committee. I think that's a really good idea, but accept the discussions on and the reasoning behind the affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
Just quickly, Chair, just picking up on Councillor Lang's point about the tunnel. Currently, of course, technically cycling is not permitted through it because it's a substandard tunnel. But when the work has been done that Sam Sheen is currently embarked upon, it will be suitable for shared use, as Darren Cook rightly said. It will also require an amendment, a new traffic regulation order. He's a member of Traffic Management Subcommittee. It will come there first for triggering the consultation, and I know it will be supported by the cycling campaign and others, because clearly it makes a nonsense of our overall strategy in the town centre to be promoting cycling and then say, but you can't cycle through the tunnel under the railway line. Cyclists already cycle through it, so we need to get to a situation where the tunnel is proper to a proper standard, and we can designate then a shared facility through it. With regard to Councillor Robinson, I know Councillor Robinson represents the sort of the Jeremy Clarkson wing of the Conservative Party, and therefore doesn't really get the fact that there are people who want to use public transport, who use our admirable bus service, who use the good rail connections, and the fact is that car ownership amongst the younger generation, I mean virtually everybody's younger to me these days, but amongst the sort of the whatever they call the millennials, the sort of Councillor Challenger's age, yeah, the car ownership use is plummeting, and what we're looking for is that greater flexibility around car clubs, around the offer that we've got in the city centre, hopefully soon, for car clubs and that flexibility. And there is, of course, and this goes back to the point I made earlier, the site we are talking about in the local plan recognises the presence of a multi-storey car park. And that multi-storey car park, if there were a proposal for it to be demolished and replaced by something else, well, that would be a major issue to be addressed by this council in terms of its overall policies. So there is already accessible parking, quite very accessible close by, and that is safeguarded within the site allocation as well, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I've not seen anybody. Oh, sorry, Councillor Lang. It's always Councillor Page's head that gets in the way.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick side comment with Councillor Page's thing about car-free living. You know, there are plenty of tradespeople out there and other people that need their vehicles and vans to carry about their everyday business. So let's make sure that they can buy those homes as well and do have a place to store their vehicles. So. Yeah.
All right, you two, all right. Thank you. We have policies that deal with this, and that's the point, I think. And a lot of people who are now living in high-rise in town centres, whether it be here or anywhere else, don't expect to have their own individual parking space on site. So, yeah, and as a society, we need to start to deal with car ownership anyway, in the ways that Councillor Page described. But yeah, there'll always be some people who need a vehicle. Right, I had a proposal ages ago from Councillor Page that we should, with all the conditions that have been listed and in the update pack, plus the things that have been asked for, everything from the design coming back to committee and opening windows and everything else that's been talked about. I'm sure it's all been captured by Wendy and Nikki, but and I've been making notes, so I won't go through them all, but it is important that we as a committee keep an eye on this application and make sure that the subsequent detailed applications that will come in come before us, so that we can ensure the consultation that's been talked about and ensure that those issues that have been raised are dealt with. I don't know if officers want to add anything else before we move to a vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify. So in the discussion, it was requested that the design, the appearance is brought back to committee for consideration and approval, hopefully, and also that the landscaping details. Would you also like the materials to be used? Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify. Sorry.
You heard that, did you? Sorry. Yeah, I was talking about picking up on Councillor Williams' point about the ventilation, but a wider environmental and sustainability. There's the sustainability in energy, which I think a future proposal should come to the committee, and whether we then also sweep in the environmental issue around ventilation as well. Although the air is better here than in many.
And Chair, there was something about place-based facilities. Place-based facilities. I don't know what.
Yes, just place-based facilities, just to add those.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to add in? Yeah, you've got land. Yeah, that was mentioned at the first. Okay, can I see? I'm happy to second from the chair. Councillor Page's proposal. Can I see all those in favour of approving this application? Thank you. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. We've taken an awful long time on that one, but it is, as has been said, a very, very important site in our town, and it needed the time spent on it. But I do apologise to those that have been waiting to speak on their applications. Equally important to you, I know. So can we move on to item 11, which is, I've lost the number, it's 109A. Yes, item 11 on page 91, and it's we have an introduction from the case officer, who is Julie Williams, and then we'll invite public speaking, both people who have objections and people who are speaking in favour. So we'll come on to that after the introduction. Thank you. Julie.
Thank you, Chair. So this application site, you can see images on your screen there. It's on the corner of Zinzan Street and Oxford Road. The application has been with us for a considerable amount of time, with reports coming to you over the last year. So the report tries to just sort of start again, I suppose, in trying to set out the scene for you in terms of the issues raised in consultations and in terms of how we've assessed it against policy, and the considerations made in terms of not only the change of use involved, but also the appearance of the building. So we have been able to change the appearance of the building to reflect the fact that it is in a conservation area. So the recommendation has been to grant planning permission for this scheme, but councillors had sincere concerns regarding managing the noise and odour coming from this, the takeaway element of the proposed use. And so the applicant was required to go away and provide further information to satisfy us on that regard. So the update report is also available for you, and that provides a bit more information on the noise and odour control, including a full set of the specifications for the equipment to be installed. There's also plans showing you the location of the vents, so above head height, normal head height, in terms of the intake, which will be on the side elevation of Zinzan Street, and also the outlet is on the rear elevation of the building. There's also more detail given on the applicant's proposed litter management strategy, and also, with apologies, I forgot to remind you that we did receive a petition back in last April from local residents concerned about the additional takeaway use being introduced on Oxford Road. It has also been pointed out to me that the recommended conditions on page 91 regarding the kitchen ventilation system, the noise attenuation and the litter management are in fact different to the paper that I presented to you on the 1st of December committee when it was deferred for more information to be provided. So maybe just to clarify, the conditions that were presented to you in December in terms of odour was that the kitchen ventilation system to be installed strictly in accordance with the specifications as approved to mitigate cooking odours to the satisfaction of council officers. The use hereby permitted shall not be made open to the public until an odour risk assessment has been carried out and a detailed odour management plan to include odour control specifications with a schedule of weekly cleaning and maintenance schedule has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thereafter, the odour management plan shall be adhered to and the cleaning and maintenance schedule made available for inspection by council officers. Then on terms of noise, the recommended wording should be the kitchen ventilation system shall be installed in accordance with the approved acoustic assessment, including the acoustic enclosure, to the satisfaction of council officers before the use hereby permitted is made open to the public. Thereafter, the ventilation system shall be managed and maintained in accordance with the approved noise mitigation specifications, with the schedule of cleaning and maintenance work made available for inspection by council officers. And finally, for the waste, although the applicant has submitted a sort of a waste, a litter management plan, what was recommended to you in December was a waste and litter management plan. So that condition is asking the applicant to provide a waste and litter management plan to be submitted for the written approval of the local planning authority before the use hereby permitted is made open to the public. The waste and litter management plan shall include details of where commercial waste is to be stored on site, how it is to be protected from vermin, and how collected and how litter arising from customers of the use is to be managed. And then the waste and litter management plan shall be implemented and followed as approved. So that's sort of adding on to the litter management strategy of the applicant. So with that clarification on those conditions, the recommendation is to grant planning permission for the change of use, but also for the advertisements. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Chair, so that's those conditions you've read out are replacing the ones that are in this report? Yeah. Just checking,
Thank you. Right, we now have public speaking, and first we've got two people who are going to speak against this application, and the first is Rupert Buckingham. Well, I think it's, have you agreed which of you is going first? Is it going to be Evelyn or Rupert?
We didn't manage to get hold of Evelyn. I think she wasn't around when I asked on the Teams meeting. Evelyn,
so she's not on. Now? She's not online.
She is online, but she wasn't there. Are you there now, Evelyn? Can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Which of you wants to go first? Do you want to go? So it's
Hi, Evelyn. Did you want to go first, or would you
Rupert.
like me to?
If I can. Yeah.
All right, so Evelyn Williams from the Conservation Area Advisory Committee speaking, actually normally with us, but she's not been too well, so she's doing it online tonight. So welcome, and you can have about 2.5 minutes each, yes?
That's what I think that's what's been agreed, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. When you're ready, Evelyn. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. It's now over a year since we submitted comments on this. Time's moved on, and also our understanding of the planning policy framework for this site. The outcome of this is that there's no valid reason to object to takeaway use in itself, assuming all other policies can be complied with. Reading CAC looks forward to the review of the local plan in the expectation that this anomaly can be addressed, which has a detrimental impact on the quality of life of residents and diversity of businesses in the area. In relation to the references to the High Street's Heritage Action Zone project that appear within the report, and as an informative, this needs to be strengthened. HS has advice, and completion of public realm works is not good enough. We will be looking for a condition to agree a planned engagement with the HS has project in relation to advice and public realm works that will also take into account the detrimental impact that this outlet could have on the local community and provide communication routes should things go wrong, for example with the extraction system or waste management plan. Readings has objectives incorporated into RBC's corporate plan for 2022-25 agreed at last week's full council meeting include: give the community a sense of pride and ownership in developing the town's future, support local businesses, the economy and local community and cultural initiatives by creating a positive sense of place through contributing to the heritage of their high street. These statements must be taken seriously, and they set our expectations of what the HAS project will deliver to residents in this conservation area. Finally, 2 requests. We would like to suggest an additional informative that a planning application will be required if the business would like to install security shutters to the building. And secondly, the side of the building facing west towards Zinzan Street has untidy trailing wires which should be removed if they are redundant and tidied up if they are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll do questions to you both at the end, I think. So if Rupert Buckingham would like to speak now, do you want to just introduce yourself and then we won't knock it off your 2.5 minutes?
Okay, yes, I'm Rupert Buckingham. I'm representing the Baker Street Association Area Neighbourhood Association. I'm a resident about 30 metres from the proposed site. And I'm against the proposal of another takeaway, as I've lived in that street for 10 years. For the last 3 years, I've had to endure the fumes from a takeaway restaurant on the other corner, 109B, of burning animal fat essentially in my living room and bedroom. I live, like I said, about 30 metres from that. I complained numerous times to the Environment Office and emailed them. Nothing's ever been, it's never been fixed. The issue still stands. And then there's a problem with waste that's produced from the restaurant at 109, which is a biryani restaurant at the moment. It's piled up in bin bags and cardboard is just left. It's not placed in appropriate bins. So every couple of months I have to take a picture and send that in and arrange for it to be cleared. It looks disgusting. I take great pride in my house. Unfortunately, it's not the most salubrious of areas, but people do live there. And while these takeaways front onto Oxford Road, the workings, the kitchen and the waste is all on the back, on the residential street, of which is Zinzan Street. So it's not really appropriate. It creates a horrible environment to live in, and it does actually get me down. It really depresses me. But, you know, I mean, what's my option? Move? Why should I have to, you know, what if I can't afford to? You know, and I just feel that there's currently 6 takeaways within a under 200 metre stretch of the Oxford Road between Howard Street and Russell Street. 4 of them already sell burgers, I don't know what this is selling, burgers, I presume. 3 sell pizzas and 4 sell kebabs. I just think in terms, it's not a different option. It's not offering us anything different for a start. Is it, I can't see any positive, positivity that it's going to give to the community. I don't see, if anyone can tell me how it's going to have a positive impact on the local area, I'd like to know, because I can't really see any. It's bad food. It's not healthy. I mean,
that's your
do we really need any more?
2 minutes 40
Thanks.
seconds that was left over.
Would you like to stay there, and then if we've got any questions for you or indeed for Evelyn, we can ask you. I see Councillor Page. Is this to Evelyn or to?
No, this is to Mr. Buckingham.
Right.
Just say a bit more, please, about the rear area and the waste problems there, because the photo doesn't fully show. I don't know. I think that's the only photo we've got this evening. But
I've got a photo I took a couple of days ago.
Yeah, well, let me just finish. I know the area very well because I live just up the top of the road, so I know the site. But just describe to us, because 109, which is the Borough place, is immediately next door, but 109 and 109A share that rear car park area where the problem of the bin bags is. Could you just say a bit more about that area? I'm not clear as to, and the applicant who's here might want to make note of this question because he's going to get asked it, how that area is currently managed or not. So just tell us a bit more about the environment of that, because you're quite right. The people go in the front, but the activity, servicing and cooking is all at the back.
Well, I don't know how it's managed. It doesn't seem to be managed at all. There is insufficient commercial waste bins, clearly, because they're creating too much waste to go in the bin. There may be one bin, but it builds up over a period of time, and I don't know whether it's as a result of me complaining to the council that it gets cleared or whether they clear it themselves. But it's an eyesore, and it must encourage vermin. You know, it's just I'm embarrassed when I have visitors come to my house if they have to see that. It shouldn't be allowed. I mean, from an environmental aspect and a health aspect. I mean, there's residential above the restaurants as well. I mean, so they're sharing that area for their waste. So that's another factor. So they have their own wheelie bins, but I don't know whether the waste is generated from the flats or the restaurants. But I'm sure some of it's from the restaurants because the packaging you can see. So yeah, I mean, it's just not. I don't have any confidence. I mean, sure, you can propose a waste management plan and brilliant, and a filtration system for the extraction. Why would I have any confidence in that when I've been living with something for 3 years, for those problems for 3 years, and reporting it to the council and nothing's changed? So why would it change now? I mean, I hope it does. You know, I'm not against fast food, but it's the other aspects, you know, I'm opposed to. It's just in the wrong location. And is it offering anything more to the area that isn't already there?
Okay, thank you. Not seeing anybody else. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ernest.
I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Payne, Mr. Buckingham, because there's someone who walks the Oxford Road twice a day into work. I see the rubbish that generates, and I think it's business rubbish, not resident rubbish. And
or customers from the businesses.
I don't want to, you know, because I'm not sure about this, but I feel your pain. So therefore, we need to ask questions of the applicant as to a robust, and then I'm going to ask Julie later on about a more robust, because it's something this was a question, by the way. I should say, do you agree that we need to get on top of this?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you, and I feel your pain.
you. Not seeing anyone else, so thank you very much to both of you for coming, and please obviously do stay and hear what we've got to say. We've got the applicant next, who's Mr. Raja, who's been waiting patiently as well. So if you'd like to swap places and come and address the meeting, thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Microphones, and if you could introduce, could you introduce yourselves, and then we won't knock that off your time for speaking.
Okay, my name's Javeria Raja, and
I'm Mohammed Raja.
okay, so do you want to start off, just tell a little bit about yourself first?
So this business that we're introducing, it's called Fat Twins. It is a burger joint. We are currently running one at the moment at the Granby in East Reading. So we revived that building. We only opened that business around about 3 months ago. As you guys know, that building is a really beautiful building, and we have really made it as nice as possible. There was many issues with that building previously. Drug use, rubbish again left in the car park. There's 18 parking spaces at the back of that car park. We've actually been able to manage that quite well with security and us being in place, litter management. We've actually got 3 normal bins, 2 recycling bins to avoid issues at that location. It's been really well welcomed by the neighbours. I've even got councillors and their families visiting the location, and you all are welcome to come down as well. It is a really, really nice place, and we've improved the location a lot.
Yeah, I just want to add to that we are very aware of the feedback that we're getting about the smell and the environmental impacts of the area, but it would be really, I think it is part of the council's responsibility to see what our neighbours are doing and the waste management, because clearly there's a concern. I think a lot of the feedback from the neighbours was the smell and the sort of the waste being left. I think it's right at the back actually here, which was their comments did relate to what the neighbour here has also said. But I do believe it goes down to what the owners are doing as well and taking responsibility, which we would 100% do. And we can show you how we're doing that at our Fat Twins branch in East Reading. So we would like to be able to have the opportunity to be able to show them and help our neighbours as well if they're having issues with their waste management, about managing that correctly. But we are very much aware of and we have experience in how to handle things properly. I totally agree. I've walked there myself, went to see the site. The first thing I did was actually call the council to complain about one of the residents that had left their recycling bins to the full, because they obviously weren't collected because they had the incorrect items in there. So I do think it's probably a combination though of residents and also the business use that was next door at the time. I don't think it was the biryani place though. I think it was something else just before that. But that was actually something I flagged myself to the council as well, because you know we've grown up on Oxford Road actually. We're brother and sister. Street, yeah. So we're both born and bred Reading, love being here, want to add to the community and be able to bring something new. Appreciate it's another burger joint, but we do think we're slightly apart from any normal burger joint, and we're getting great feedback. We've only been open for 3 months. We've got returning customers and all of them are locals, so they're quite happy to be there. So yeah, so just going back to the main point before our time runs out, our environmental concerns, we've addressed that with the noise extractor fan, which is a higher graded one, paying quite a lot of money for it, so hopefully that will appease, and that will also the air purifier and things like that will mitigate the smell and the issues that would come from our establishment. And you know, we're happy to work with the council, and we have been working it because this has been a couple of years now. I think we started this in 2020, so we would like to kind of move this along, and we will work with the council to make sure that we can achieve those goals. And also the residents, you know, I appreciate it's another burger joint, but you know, people love going to areas where there's choice. My kids, myself, will go to one, like they'll go to a Subway, one wants a Subway, one wants a burger, you know, everyone wants something different. So I don't think that's that's a negative as such. And you know, I think our burgers are better than the others, so come and try them in the East Reading branch so you can see. But I do think like the Granby is really keen, like I'm really keen for you guys to see how we're managing that, because we are very proud of it. And also to even like, if you wanted us, we could get feedback from the local residents or our local customers, who are mainly our customers who come down from the Granby Gardens, and they come and they're really happy that we've got the cameras up, fly tipping has stopped. And we do still get people coming in, but we watch the cameras a lot, so we will go out and we'll ask people to leave. So I think it's having a presence there does improve the area. Somebody there that's all the time. Whereas where it was vacant, I think that attracts, you know, mess. It attracts fly tipping and things like that. Did you want to add? Sorry, did you want to add something quickly? I'm the bossy sister.
That's it for now, I think.
Yeah, so
that is your 5 minutes.
Is that it? Okay, great.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to just stay there for a minute in
Yeah.
case there are questions. I've got Councillor Page and Councillor Ennis already indicating.
Yep.
Yep, thank you for your commercial. Well, my first question before you spoke was, why do you think there's a shortage of burger bars in the area? You've partly addressed it, but it is a serious point that Mr. Buckingham raised, and it is, one has to admit, a weakness in our local plan, namely the fact that an area can have so many similar uses. So, that's not your fault, that's our fault. So you've partly addressed that already by way of your commercial, but you might just want to say a bit more about why you think your use, on top of what else is in that area, is going to work. The issue that's already been raised by Mr. Buckingham, I would invite you to comment on, and that's the management of the rear area, because it's not a straightforward ownership, is it? Yeah. You have 109 with access rights. I don't know who actually owns that whole area, and therefore, whilst you will be required, and you've agreed to sign up to a waste and litter management plan, and that's commendable, the fact is you'll probably say, well, that's not our responsibility. And therefore, the way in which that whole rear area continues to be mismanaged, you might be absolutely superb, but the wider area is a concern to Mr. Buckingham, it's a concern to me as one of the local councillors, and to Councillor Rowland, who's going to speak as well, who lives just over the road. So just say a bit more about how you would address that, because it's not in your interest to have a badly managed premises next door. Absolutely. Generating complaints. Yeah. And the final question from me relates to the plan that you've submitted, or the document from Springfield, which is attached to the update report that we had today. On page 19 of our update, I can't see what page number it is on the Springfield document, but it's the one that's got cleaning and maintenance. And there's a detailed schedule there about the canopy must be externally cleaned on a weekly basis, and then there's weekly, daily, 3 times a week, using hot water for grease filters, and then the carbon filters. Fine. Are you willing to accept a condition, and this is why it's important to have an inspection ability by our health officers? Clearly the cleaning and maintenance is critical to not producing the odours. Yeah. And the problem that you've got is that over the road at 109B, and they withdrew the application today, is a mismanaged and badly operated facility, and you're having their sins visited on you, which is why Mr. Buckingham is rightly cynical about the conditions. Not cynical, he's sceptical, and therefore it's important that these conditions about maintenance are adhered to, and that therefore your extraction unit doesn't cause the problems that 109B is causing. So sorry, it's a bit of a long question, but it's important.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So as for the shared use, we hope that we're quite good at developing relationships. So we're hoping the plan is to develop a good relationship with our neighbours and come to because it's shared use, we will need to be on the same page. and we're hoping that we'll be able to agree with them a way of managing the waste, whether that's having not so much separate stuff, but more of a joint area which we both manage together. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to deal with the waste issue, and we're quite confident that we'll be able to do that. Do you know them at all?
Yes, I do,
Yeah.
and I have spoken to them about it already.
So Mohammed does all the dealing with the kind of like he knows quite a lot of other businessmen in the area, but that would be our proposal. It would be to work with them together to make sure we can deal with that issue, and that would be kind of the management area. As for the clauses in the document which says what we need to do with the cleaning of the facilities, that's something that I wouldn't even allow not to do. That we're going to be spending a significant amount of money here. We're not going to be not doing that. That's just not something that I even would consider not doing. It has to be done. So that's something we will do, and we will work out what timings they need to be done so that it doesn't affect anyone or business or the residents and stuff, just to make sure that the cleaning is done at a suitable time. So that's something we would. Was there another question as well? Actually, was that you're so like management of area
burgers? Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, it was expanding on why we need another burger.
Why we need another burger place? I do think sort of compare. Obviously, the biryani place is rice. It's a rice dish. It's a totally different restaurant to ours. We've got Pepe's, which is next door, which do different. We don't do the Pepe's flavours or anything like that. We are a halal establishment. Most people call it the halal McDonald's. It is cheap, fast. They are. I know probably shouldn't be saying that. Like legally not allowed to compare ourselves to McDonald's, but it is cheaper, fast food, which the kids seem to really enjoy. So I do think that we've got different flavours, and we are slightly different to the other burger joints that are on that street, which we call the food street now. So, but I understand the council might want to be looking at diversifying it, but I don't think it's a negative at all. I think it's positive to have different types of foods, and then when people do go out for a meal, if they are getting a takeaway, they're all in the same kind of area, and you can get whatever you prefer.
Yeah, it's carrying on the vein of cleaning. I mean, I think you've answered quite a lot, but still a cynicism. I mean, fair play to I wanted to get a bit angry, but your very slick presentation is find it very difficult to do that. So fair play to you. And you're also red and born, and that always ticks boxes for me. But the fact is though that there needs to be a focus. There needs to be a focus on the cleaning. The question that what you raised from Councillor Page is, what about the front? What about people going into your burger place and then throwing it out on the front, because that happens a lot as well. What's your plans?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So currently we have at the Granby, we have I've bought litter pickers for the employees. So when we have a schedule where people will go around, collect litter from inside and outside, even from the car park. So that's something we will be doing on a regular basis. I've even bought raincoats for my staff. So, if it's raining outside, that's what they will be doing. So we always want to keep the environment around us clean as possible. And that's what we're doing at the Granby. You can visit and you'll be able to see at any point. That's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give my intestines a rest, to be honest with you. But what about the idea of liaison with the residents? I mean, we should get all businesses to do this, but because you're on the spot now for the planning, what should be your plan to talk to local residents who would be fed up with the rubbish and fed up with the...
We're happy to meet with them and go through anything and their concerns again, which I think is evidence, and we've seen it for ourselves when we went to visit. It's a spot where even when I went now, I was like, not quite sure, it's quite messy. It was dirty, and it did prompt me to call the council. But I do think we're happy to speak to residents and hopefully be able to show them that we are we're willing to work. And I do think being locals and caring about Reading makes us a little bit different to the others that might not be performing the way they should be. I don't know who owns Pepe's or who's sat at the top managing it, but we will be managing it, and I'm quite confident in our ability to make sure that we're doing right by the community. But we'd be happy to have an open discussion and a meeting if the council would like to arrange that, or the residents would like to meet us. Yeah, we've got 2 pints.
And being local, we grew up, like I said, we just grew up off Oxford Road on Chester Street. That's where most of our life was. I went to Wilson Primary School and I went to Blessed Farringdon Catholic School as my secondary. There you go. So
God bless you.
I do think it matters, though. I think it matters, like when we're quite invested and we're very hands-on. We're not, when we go to any of our businesses, we get involved. We don't sit there we're not hands in the pocket managers. We will go out and we will brush up and we will clean up. And I've not made any fries or anything. But
this is home for us. Reading's, we want Reading we want to see it do well as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Williams and then Councillor Carnell. Then maybe we'll move on to Councillor Roden.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for coming in. I have been to your East Reading restaurant. I have had what I thought was a very good veggie burger. Thank you very much. I agree that the site and the venue has improved. Not only that, residents have actually said that to me unprompted. They also think that the site and the venue has improved.
Thank you.
So I can definitely back that up. I think what I'd like to ask is 2 things really. If that improvement is down to you 2 guys, are you going to be on site? Will you be working in these places, or do you hand over the management to somebody else? Are you hands-on with these 2 premises? And my second question is, the conditions that may be placed upon approval this evening, if approval is granted, are you clear that those are not aspirational? Those must be met, or enforcement will be round, and if they're not met, then effectively approval has not been met itself, and the businesses can't run. They must be run well. There will be enforcement. So, yeah, I think that's what I was asking. You guys have obviously impressed members of the committee this evening, including Councillor Ennis, which is not an easy thing to do, I don't think. But yeah, are you guys hands-on, and do you understand the gravity of the conditions? Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
So absolutely hands-on. We both will be present. In any of our businesses, we're very much we don't pass management to other people. We will have supervisors there who will oversee things because we can't be everywhere at once, but we're very particular about who we pick. We still don't have a general manager for our stores because it has to be the right fit, same vision, same work ethic as we have. So we're very particular about that, but we will definitely be hands-on, which does mean visiting each place. And because we're only in Reading, that makes it, we're both able to both work together as well full time. So we will be hands-on yet to that question. The second one, as for the conditions, I'm from a background where I'm very from finance and banking. Everything has to be as it is, and the rules are the rules. So we don't have any issues with you guys setting rules for us and we making sure that we abide by them. And we do have other, we also have an estate agent where we have HMOs, which we have deal with sort of things like that. But so we have, conditions that need to be met when it comes to safety and certification and, things like that. So we're very much involved with that. I just want to add quickly, though, because somebody mentioned the flats at the top. We actually manage some of those, so I can get involved with making sure that the bins are used correctly and make sure that everything is being done correctly and it's not waste created by our tenants as such. So there's no issue there with us abiding to conditions.
You're not managing the lab.
Sorry.
Sorry. Oh.
You're not managing
I don't think. Sorry. Yeah. I don't know. Is it okay for me to address? No. We are. No. Okay. No. Okay. He doesn't want to make the comment but not have the answer. Just so you know that when I did visit the premises, the rubbish that was there, we've had to put gates up because people were fly tipping over. We have tried to manage that by putting gates up. It doesn't stop people from fly tipping. What stops people from fly tipping is cameras. And we've proved that at the Granby. So hopefully we can do the same here.
Councillor Carnell, and then we'll...
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the speakers. Unlike Councillor Williams, I've not had the opportunity to make a site visit to your East Reading branch as yet, but you never know. With this proposal, we're actually quite fortunate tonight in that you already have the established business in East Reading. We've heard complaints of rubbish and litter and the smells. Firstly, can you tell us how many complaints you've had about rubbish, litter, smells from the East Reading establishment? And secondly, I'm glad you've brought this up now, if you already manage the flats above there, why is there an issue with litter? Why would that change if you get the go-ahead tonight?
So the East Reading branch, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so the East Reading branch, we've had no complaints at all. In fact, everyone's really happy with the changes that we have made and brought in. I think the best thing we did was actually have more commercial bins. I think having 3 commercial bins and 2 recycling bins allows us to manage the waste really well. And I think that's possibly going on to what maybe the Buriani boys are doing wrong next door. I think they only have 2 commercial bins, no recycling bins. In fact, I saw some of the recycling oil canisters that they have in the residential bins, which was quite concerning actually to me. So 100%, I think this location needs someone who's actually going to take a little bit more responsibility rather than our neighbours. And because we are sharing the rear of the building, we have to work together and maybe providing extra bins or whatever we need to do. We need to do that to resolve the problem so it helps us and the residents. I don't like to go to that location and see. Like I said, we grew up in the area. We don't like to see this. We want to see it clean.
And just going back to the litter issue, when I visited, I found that it was fly tipping and not the residents. Actually, the residents up there, they're very small flats. They're not being occupied by a lot of people. I mean, like it's 1, 2. I think there's one person with a pet, but I think the issue is the neighbours and the mess that they're creating that we need to address with them directly and create enough bins to deal with it, but also speak to the first house on the side, which I've noticed every time I go, their recycling bins are always full. There's 2 out there and they are overflowing literally over towards the gate of the premises, which we did especially install to stop the fly tippers. I just think it's really important to note that was a massive issue at that premises.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing anybody else wishing to ask a question, so thank you very much for your time. And then if we could just ask Councillor Rowland to exercise her right now to just address us. And I know she's already declared that she's a local resident and predetermined, but she just wants to say a few words.
Would you hear? Yeah, and we can.
Yes. So if you'd like to go back to your other seats.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. And I especially thank Mr. Buckingham for coming forward and representing the residents of Zinzian Street and their concerns over this site. I also thank the owners for, I think this would have been the third time that this has almost come forward for finally coming, because that probably could have herded things along, I think, at an earlier stage. I would like to allow members to reflect on something that Ms. Raja said, talking about the food and the burger bar and the kind of food that's coming to the area, and she said kids love it. If I could explain really quickly. I never do, but I'll try. London boroughs have begun to look very seriously about how they deal with fast food and fast food runs of areas. They realize that fast food can cause child obesity, and in many boroughs, they have actually stopped fast food chains or areas of fast food establishments within 400 meters of a school. In this case, the cluster area that we're talking about here is about 380 meters from the Oxford Road Community School, and then also from the Civitas Academy. So as we look to the local plan, and Councillor Page was right to say that our local plan is lacking somewhat in that regard, we need to reflect on the fact that this type of food can cause childhood obesity, and it is the type of food that can make people obese. When you've got a selection of a burger bar, this and that kind of thing, the biryani next door and the chicken piri and all of that's not healthy living. And it also is put in an area where there are a number of residents that are not wealthy. There are a number of residents that live on my street whose only window is to open out to the front on Zinzan Street. And so I know that when Rupert spoke, he's fortunate to have windows out the front and the back, as am I, but many of our neighbors on the street and many of the ones that signed the petition that I was glad that was put in the pack also only have one window facing out. And so if the odor is there, that's what they get. Their bed smells like that, their house smells like that. And so it's very unfortunate. So I understand and can empathize with Mr. Buckingham when he said, it makes me feel bad. I've been depressed about this. He actually had informed me of that. And that's really not a good thing. Why should fast food establishments make you feel badly? But the problem is they're predominant and they're not necessarily, or have not always been, a positive feature on the street. Mr. and Ms. Raja have certainly expressed their willingness to make this into the most wonderful of establishments, and we certainly must have faith in that. I would like to also go back to what Evelyn Williams said in regards to the High Street Heritage Action Zone and the possibility that we have about making the front of the establishment a better establishment. She spoke about our new street front, or our new retail front, shop front policy, and about how shutters really should be going on the inside and how we could possibly condition that to make that go to those to go on the inside should they decide they need shutters. The other thing that I would like to do, possibly as an informative, is because I know in the application they are asking to remain open till 11:30. We have a policy of late night refreshment that begins from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. So I would like there to be some kind of informative or a condition that if they are going to serve after 11 o'clock, that they must apply for a late night refreshment with licensing to clear that. And I hope that they understand that policy already for that extra half hour. So let's see, I just want to make sure. Yes. Councillor Page pointed to the great mess that is 109 and 109A in the back car park. And I am really, well, let's put, yeah, I'm quite concerned. I was also quite concerned that you said that you actually manage some of the properties upstairs, because those are constantly putting rubbish out into the car park area. So I was really a bit astounded because that has really been out of control. And if you've actually had control over that car park area, I'm really shocked, because if you look over 10 years, that car park, and you look over Google Maps, that car park has never improved in 10 years. And the gate that has been put up that was supposed to be required back in 2014 has really done nothing. It is not fly tipping, it is Briani boys, and it is the residents from upstairs that are really doing that. Rupert and I live both right on the street. We don't see people going in there and fly tipping. So I really am concerned how, when something may indeed be the fault or the problem with fat twins, that we're not going to get the response, well, you know, that's Briani Boys. Well, you know, that's the residents upstairs. I appreciate and understand and respect your hope to bring them on side, but after 10 years of never having seen improvement in that back car park, I'm a little bit dubious. So I do hope for the very best on that. I do not think that there is any possibility to not go with the officer recommendation. The petition speaks to itself that residents were not happy about having another fast food place. Fast food is not enhancing the area. And we will, I suppose, remain to be convinced, but I would at least ask for those items that I mentioned there. And I'm just trying to do a double check to make sure. I think that is about it, but thank you very much. And thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'll throw it open to the committee now for Councillor Page.
Chair, in view of the lateness of the hour, but I'll be brief. But can I thank the speakers and the applicants and Mr. Buckingham for coming along, because this has been a long-running problem, as Councillor Rowland has rightly said. But I do think that we have now, with the applicant, at least two. Well, I didn't expect to, but two applicants who've come along this evening, taken the trouble to engage in a way that the owners and operators of 109B have never shown any interest in. They are, by the way, part of a franchise run from Birmingham, and have shown really quite contemptible approach to the management of that facility, and that is why residents are rightly concerned. They don't want to see another badly run, polluting establishment. But I think we have been, with the conditions that we've got this evening and with the willingness of the applicant to engage, and they are local, and notwithstanding other points that have been made, I think we have heard a willingness to engage, and we'll certainly hold that to you, and both Councillor Rowland and myself and local residents will look forward to some early meetings with you to take this forward, because if you can act as a catalyst to engaging and getting the cooperation and the more responsible operation of adjoining businesses, then it's to everybody's good as well as yours. Councillor Rowland has her views, and I respect them. I don't share them entirely about the proliferation of fast food joints. Fast food is a reality. I understand the health concerns. We have nothing in our local plan about that, so there's no basis upon which we could refuse that. And the vast majority of fast food outlets don't generate the complaints that 109B do. We have them opposite. We have residents living above the takeaways on the other side of Oxford Road. Mr. Buckingham referred to them. We've not had any complaints from the residents above them about fumes. There may be complaints about noise and fights and all the other delights of living on the Oxford Road, but certainly it is possible to run a fast food takeaway without generating the problems that 109B has. And it's very regrettable that 109B have cut and run, withdrawn their application. And I would just make it clear, Chair, through you to Mr. Buckingham, that we will be reviewing what enforcement action we can take in respect of 109B. That is not over. And there are measures that we as an authority can take and should be taking, and I'll be talking along with Councillor Rowland with our lawyers and planning officers about what we can do. But we shouldn't, and we can't hang the sins of 109B on 109A. And Councillor Rowland is right. I don't think there are any reasons that we can refuse this application, given the quite tight conditions that we are imposing, and Julie has read through those, and those will, if they were applied to 109B, would would deliver improvement there. So, Chair, I would propose that we adopt the officer recommendation. I would ask for the informative about the roller blinds that Evelyn Williams referenced, and also about the licensing point. I'm not clear quite what licenses already apply. I don't think any, in fact, in respect of 109A. So clearly they will need to ensure that all necessary licensing approvals have been granted. And in respect, I think those are probably the only other points, Chair. So I would move on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor Ennis and Councillor Carnell.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just want to ask Julie, you read about what the situation with the litter management plan. It's on page 99, a litter management plan adhered to. Yeah, there is, isn't there? But there's more details, isn't there? The details about the litter management, because there's been some offers made by the applicants. Whereabouts in the, because I read them, I didn't think. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the update.
Because they're not in there, but you've read them out. Yeah. So these are the ones that you read out. They're going to go on to the odours, noise, waste. Okay. Okay, because I would appeal. Yeah, I've got it, because it didn't feel that much reassured in the thing, but that's fair enough. I heard you reading it out. I just wanted to get it clear, but I would appeal to the owners, and maybe, as Councillor Page said, that you could be the saviours, because I tell you now, it ain't the council. Watching, going up in the morning, and I'll be heading back hopefully soon, maybe not. It all depends on me, I suppose. Seeing the litter and seeing the council clean the Oxford Road twice a day at least, with machines, with a little fella that's got a pair of tweezers, to be honest with you, working his socks off. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was the council's fault. I think there is a big responsibility on business, and I would appeal to you. You've given a very good, I think you'd win Dragon's Den. I think we should hold you to that, really. And because I think there's so much work needs doing for Oxford Road and the residents, so much. So I appeal to you, to do that, and we support you, but you help on and do what you said you're going to do, and that would be a help. Thank you.
Councillor Carnell, and I'm not seeing anybody else, so maybe we can then.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm like Councillor Ennis. Could we have a recap on the litter management plan? That's fine. Don't worry about that one. And also, the applicants hold great store by having CCTV over the back area. They say that's a big deterrent on littering. Could that be added as a condition? If they're so happy, it wouldn't be anything too onerous for them anyway. Thank you.
Just ask Julie Williams to respond to all of that.
Thank you. So in terms of the condition on waste and litter management plan, it's up to the applicant to provide us with their strategy for dealing with this. And we've already heard how the Fat Twins operate at the Granby Tavern location. So it sounds like what we are asking for as part of that condition won't be news to them or difficult for them to comply with, because it sounds like in terms of the provision of commercial waste, customer waste, also dealing with vermin, and also dealing with the delivery times, etc. Because I think that sounded like it was an issue with Biryani Boys, that they weren't having their waste collected frequently enough to deal with the problem. So it would be for the applicants to submit their management plan with those details, which if it also includes, I don't know if it's reasonable for us to require that their management plan includes details of CCTV camera operation, because I don't know if that is always the fail-safe. That should always be part of a management plan, but I think if the applicants want to confirm that that's what they want to do, then that would be something we could approve, and then thereafter they install it and carry on maintaining them. But I don't know if it would be sort of asking for a little bit too much to insist on CCTV cameras for this, but I've got no problem if members actually think yes we should do, because it sounds like it won't be a problem for the applicants. But I wouldn't recommend that, as I think it might be going a little bit too far in terms of that. So that still needs to be submitted to us to approve the fine detail of that. And clearly the request for the vermin control came from environmental protection officers, so that's why that was added to that, the wording of that condition as well, because we are aware of that as being a problem. Yeah, I think that's as much as I can say on that. On Wendy and I were just discussing the request regarding the roller shutters have been an informative, but indeed we can make that a planning condition that there should be no roller shutters, and there's no obvious reason why a takeaway use should have, or restaurant use should have roller shutters, etc. But again, we could make it. Yeah, but so we can make a condition that any roller shutters are inside of the property, which is appropriate for a property in the conservation area. Indeed. As far, if I can just continue, I think Evelyn Williams asked if it could be a condition regarding the appearance of the forecourt area. As I've tried to explain, the applicant doesn't own that forecourt area. It's beyond their control to do that, and that should really be coming forward as part of the programme for the High Street Heritage Action Zone. So I'm happy to put more detail into the informative, but I don't think it would be appropriate to make it a planning condition because it would be beyond the scope of the application to meet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right.
I propose that we add then the condition about the roller blind, and that I also propose that the waste and litter management plan be consulted, or that local ward members be consulted on the waste and litter management plan before it's approved, please.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I also wanted to make the point that we actually are under a restructure at the moment, and we are creating a new public protection team, which is amalgamating the enforcement regime, I suppose, the regulatory officers into one team. And I'm hoping that going forward, because obviously the problems we've identified with 109B is a combination of things, not just planning breaches, but also licensing issues, yeah, all sorts of matters. And so I'm hoping that, I don't know if it would give any comfort to the neighbour, but under that regime, I'm hoping that we'll have a more joined up approach to dealing with matters like this when they come to us, because if a complaint comes into planning enforcement, they will be able to more quickly share that information with colleagues and apply the best power to apply quickly. Whereas sometimes planning enforcement can be quite clunky compared to some of the other powers available to the council. And so that's the objective of that amalgamation. Thank you.
Good. Okay, but I think we all understand why residents locally are sceptical until it's all operating, and clearly put up with a lot over many years. So let's hope that between the influence that the new business might have, and indeed your restructure, we might finally get some action to sort out the disgrace that's, and Councillor Page is quite right, we can't blame the applicants tonight for the sins of nearby premises. So can I see those in favour of the recommendation and all the other things that were added on, including shutters and so on? Thank you very much. That's unanimous.
Chair, can I just check whether we're having the licensing? Oh, okay, thank you. You didn't ask for against, Joe. You didn't ask for vote against.
Sorry. I thought you voted in favour. You were voting against. Oh, okay. Sorry. Couldn't see you. Couldn't see your hand through John Ennis.
Sorry, Chair, I was just asking about the licensing. Did you want an informative about the licensing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please. So I think. Well, I don't think we're not making it a condition, no, but we are hopefully going to have some discussion with them about, and it might indeed be part of their plan to keep an eye on what's going on. So we'll wait and see. Okay, thank you very much. But let's crack on. Already said earlier that 12 has been withdrawn, as we've heard. Item 13 is Wayland Street, which was deferred a couple of meetings ago and is brought back tonight. And That's on page 121, and Tom Hughes is the case officer.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, this application relates to the conversion and extension of a building currently in use for storage and distribution purposes to a 2-bedroom dwelling. The application was deferred from a previous meeting following concerns raised regarding elements of the proposal to the Wayland Street frontage. Amended plans have been supplied and they omit a previously proposed porch extension and boundary wall and railings. And as a result of that omission, the existing entrance doors, which you can see in the photograph in blue, would be replaced with a timber frame door and matching wall panel. So when viewed from Wayland Street, the form of the building would be broadly consistent with its current appearance. Further concerns were raised regarding the impact of the proposed development on existing sideward windows of the adjoining building at the ground and first floor. To those concerns, officers would respond to say that the existing access and the proposed access to the building would be consistent, though the area to the frontage would be formalised with a small scheme of landscaping. People would access the building in the same way as they do currently. Again, at the first floor window relationship is the same as the existing. Officers would acknowledge that the residential use of the building is obviously slightly more intensive than the pre-existing use for sort of storage distribution purposes, but it is not considered that there is a significantly greater degree of loss of privacy both into and out of the proposed dwelling than currently exists. So all of that together, officers consider that the proposals represent an overall enhancement to the building and the wider conservation area setting, and so the recommendation remains as previously to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank the officer for his work in going away on this item and coming back with something that is respectful of the conservation area and providing a real historical context for what's a very small site, but is actually quite significant in terms of the heritage of the conservation area there. And I am quite pleased with the adjustment on the site and its facade onto Wayland Street. I am resting in your good faith about the overlooking situation from that first floor window, but I think that you've done the needful on that, and I'm happy to accept the application.
Thank you. Anybody else on this? In which case, can we move to a vote? All those in favour of this? Any against? Thank you. We then move on. We already dealt with item 14, obviously. Item 15, 1 Bedford Road. Julie, I think you're going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good night. We've had 2 references to High Street Heritage Action Zone in one evening, which of course I'm very proud of. So this is an interpretation board as part of the project, explaining some of the projects we've been doing with the local community. It replaces a Unitarian car park sign with an interesting board. The recommendation is to grant, but I need to point out, it's been pointed out to me by the case officer that in fact the consultation period is still running. That finishes on for residents we've consulted by letter, finishes on the 6th, but the site notice expires on the 8th of April. But the project is running now, so we're really keen to try and get the board up as soon as we can. So I hope that members can agree to delegate the decision to grant planning permission, subject to no material objections being received by the 8th of April, but as I say, we've had none so far, and it can only be an improvement for the area, I feel. Thank you.
Mr. Rowland, sorry.
Would just like to support anything regarding the High Street Heritage Action Zone along the Oxford Road. It's been a really, really great, wonderful mural, and it's a great interpretation panel for it. I'm more than happy to grant this, and I'm sure we won't get any nasty comments by the 8th of April. So thank you.
Sorry, I just need to I've just spotted another error. There's on the recommendation page 251, there's listed as one of the conditions, standard advertisement conditions. That shouldn't be on there. It's a full application we're dealing with. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? No, can we move to vote? Those in favour of the recommendation? Any against? Thank you. That takes us on to item 16 on page 257, which is going to be introduced by David Brett, and I believe Councillor Emberson is going to take herself off, having declared an interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for exterior alterations and repair works to various terrace houses and semi-detached dwellings at the Old Norcott Estate to upgrade and improve the thermal efficiency of the respective properties. The external wall insulation system is a key component of this project and aims to improve thermal efficiency through conserving fuel and power. Extension of roof overhangs to gable ends or dormer-style roofs are also proposed to allow the depth of the proposed external wall installation. Other measures to improve thermal efficiency include air source heat pumps and installation of triple glazing. Structural repairs and the renewing of flat roof coverings are also proposed where appropriate. As per the update report, all response was received to the public consultation. The response was from a private owner of another property on Lyndhurst Road who wished for the contact details of the principal contractor as they would like to pursue similar works to their property. The applicant has provided plans demonstrating the final locations of the proposed air source heat pump units to the rear, which will be located to the rear of each respective property. The installation and ongoing maintenance of the units are to be secured via condition. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Emberson, do you wish to just address the committee? Thank you.
Yeah, very briefly, you won't be surprised that I support this application. It's not too dissimilar to that came in September. And in planning terms, I think aesthetically, in terms of the street scene, it offers great benefits. And of course, you've already heard my political broadcast at full council about retrofitting homes. So I won't go through that again, but I think, it's really beneficial for our tenants, these works. And whilst much of it is granted under permitted development, I think the heating systems is really important. And it's nice that this year we've had a lot of applications come through that do have good climate credentials, especially with the cost of living at the moment. And it's just nice to see one from us with the green credentials too. So I support this and hope you will too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on this? Councillor Stanford-Beale.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say how wonderful it is to see this improvements of cladding and the triple glazing for these houses. It's really important that we look after our housing stock, and it also does, as Councillor Emerson's already said, cut the heating bills and the cost of living at the moment. So it's very important we do it. I think Councillor Page, you may wish to remind Councillor White about this when he goes on about Bracknell Forest doing all their wonderful updates. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else. So can we move to a vote? All those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. And any against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And finally, we get on to item 17, which is the replacement of Rannicket Primary School. And I believe Ethne Humphries is going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. This is a Regulation 3 application for the redevelopment of the Rannicket Academy Primary School in Tilehurst. The school forms part of the wider D Park estate, and the site forms part of a specific D Park site allocation within the Reading Borough local plan. Reading Borough Council is the applicant. The proposals include provision of a new two-form entry school building to replace the existing school buildings, a new multi-use games area, a new car park, and significant soft landscaping. The existing synthetic turf pitch will remain in its current location. As noted in the main agenda report, the substantial change in site levels poses a significant constraint to meaningful redevelopment of the site, and the scheme is considered to take the opportunities available within the site constraints to provide a good quality school building and associated play areas and new multi-use games area. The scheme is considered to be acceptable in terms of its design and impact on the wider area, the quality of school accommodation for existing and future users, the impact on neighbouring properties, and provision of soft landscaping, sustainability measures, biodiversity enhancements, and car and cycle parking. The scheme is considered to maintain and enhance the role of the Rannochette Primary School in serving the local and wider community as required by the D Park site allocation. There is an update report on page 81 of the update pack. This includes clarification on the wording of the unilateral undertaking and recommended conditions, as well as sustainability measures. The recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions as set out in the main agenda report and update report, and completion of a unilateral undertaking to secure provision of the community use elements and an employment skills and training plan, as also set out within the main agenda report and update report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. As the local member, can I just say how welcome this is? The new provision of a new school and indeed the adjacent community centre, which is being built as we speak, is some of the community benefit that the whole community was very keen to see as part of the regeneration. We still have a little way to go in terms of the final phase, but it's getting there, and I think anybody who's been to D Park recently will see just how improved it is compared with how it was 10 years ago, and I really look forward to the new school coming forward and providing a high standard of accommodation for the children and staff who work and go to school there. Thank you. I've got people indicating now. I've got Councillor Williams and then Councillor Carnell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure this will be a great building and children will be very happy in the future. I just want to ask a question, I guess. We know we have to stop buying gas from murderous dictators. We know we have to stop burning fossil fuels for the sake of the planet and for the sake of future generations. We know even the government, what shall I call the dysfunctional government we have now, is going to ban the sale of gas boilers at some point. But this design includes gas boilers, and I'd like to know why, if anyone has an answer for that.
Ethne, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you. Yes, for clarity, the gas boiler is largely to provide hot water for the kitchen and not sort of reliant. The heating of the school is not reliant on that. And the in-house sustainability officers have been party to providing advice to the applicant from pre-application stage to application stage, and the policy in terms of the decentralised energy provision. I think it's important to note that the solar panels are an established and existing renewable energy technology, and that's considered a benefit to the scheme overall, and that the gas boiler itself is, as I say, it's largely to provide hot water for the kitchen, and there's a small part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to the officer for that answer. It's great to hear that it doesn't play any role in the heating, although the word largely was used there. I'm going to assume it doesn't play any role in the heating of the building and is only in the heating of water for the kitchens, but still, it seems like an astonishing inclusion for a council to put a gas boiler into a new build. Although I imagine it is still policy compliant, and it's good to see that the heating comes from another source, it still seems very disappointing, Chair.
Councillor Carnell.
Thank you, Chair. Like yourself, I'm delighted to see the new school proposal coming forward. It'll be a vast improvement. I'm also very pleased to see that there's already a condition in place about the times of use for the mugger, which will become more important as the land adjacent becomes developed later on. As I saw on the site visit, the one thing that disappoints me is there's no controlled crossing anywhere, a zebra crossing, which I would think primary school children will be quite important. Teach them early to cross roads safely. But that said, I will be supporting. Thank you.
Can I just come back on the crossing, because there's a number of facilities in that location where it's been agreed down the years that we do need a crossing somewhere, but and some initial funding was agreed with the D-Park partnership to assist with that, but we agreed sensibly, I think, to wait until the school design and entrance and so on were completed, so we could see the best location to put the crossing. So, but the reason it's not part of this particular application is because it would serve so many different needs. There's the extra care housing, there's people crossing to the shops, there's people needing to get to the bus stop around the corner in Spey Road. So what's going to happen now, and we can ask Darren Cook to come in on this as well, is we're now going to look to see where the best location is and use the funding that we've already got, plus hopefully some funding from elsewhere, but it would not be right to place the onus on the school development to pay for it. Does that make sense? So there will be a crossing coming along in hopefully the fairly near future.
Thank you for that, Chair. I will say that I did see on the site visit there isn't an obvious place for a crossing along there.
I think we need to.
So it's a challenge for our highways officers.
I don't know if Darren, do you want to just say a word about that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think you've kind of described the situation in the vast majority. I think the only thing I would add is the school itself is a two-form entry at the moment, and it or has the capacity to be a two-form entry, and it's retaining as a two-form entry. So it wouldn't meet the tests to ask the school to fund a crossing in that location. So as Councillor Lovelock has said, we are looking at ways of funding a crossing through other streams to bring that forward, and obviously the slightly relocated access for the school children from where that's located at the moment will mean that the movement of children in and around the school will be different to what it is today. So we need to kind of look at all of that to identify the best location for a crossing, so we're not providing something that then becomes redundant in the future. So we will be looking at that and kind of bringing that forward when we can.
Not seeing anybody else, can we move to a vote on this? Those in favour of granting this application? Any against? Thank you all very much. Thank you. That's it. And can I just say, because I won't be at the next meeting, so I have a family wedding to get to, which clashes with the next meeting. So Councillor Challenger will be in the chair. But can I wish Councillor Stanford Beale all the best, because this will be, well, next time will be your last meeting, but it'll be the last planning meeting in this room. So thank you for your contributions and all the best.
Actually, Chair, is it worth reminding members that we will be at the Old Town Hall?
Sorry, I thought I just said that, but you don't forget we are at the Old Town Hall next time, because they'll be counting not counting the postal votes, verifying the postal votes in here, and it'll all be locked up and security and so on. So you need to get yourselves to the Town Hall for 6:30, and it's in the Victoria Room, not the concert hall. Thank you.